Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 198, Schwa. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. There's no way you're sticking me in a plane and melting me down and putting me in a bucket. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of you know. All of that will make sense if you listen to this episode. This is all Speeding Bullets. We've got a number of books. Please check the show notes and the website for information on all of the books we're going to be covering here. This is the first of a few episodes we're going to end up doing like this over the next couple weeks. There's a lot of books that Jim and I want to talk about, and this is something that we're going to be... We started Speeding Bullets a couple years ago as just a concept of ways to do like some more quick shots of books like this, and I want to periodically do episodes like this. We did a lot of this stuff in January where we came back a little bit sooner with some shorter shows and quote-unquote shorter shows, but to come and do this type of thing. I planned on doing this much sooner this time around, but I had the flu over the last weekend, so this is the first episode that was... You'll actually hear me get a little bit raspy during part of this, but this is the first episode, first day in a while where I could actually get and record where I knew I wasn't going to be coughing or hacking partway through the episode, so thank you for your patience on this one. I'm excited because we've got also the first of a couple segments coming on listener voicemails with some great discussions coming off of listener voicemails on this one. So I'm excited to continue these in other episodes as we go on.
Schwa-y? Really? You had to go with Schwa-y? Come on.
Well, you know, because it's really ridiculous. What we're doing is we're coming up with creative ways to number our episodes so we can have our 200th show be our 4th anniversary show. And that's really otherwise I would do like normal numbering, but I really just think it's kind of cool that our 200th episode winds up being, we're so close, it's March 23rd to our 4th anniversary show that I'm going to keep creatively numbering the show. But we were joking around about the letter system because it is, for anybody that's been a long-time listener of the show, we used to get emails where people were upset about the multi-part episodes when we released them. So it was funny that we're doing this again because I really decided to stop doing that back then, and now we're back doing this nonsense again. But there actually is a reason, because 200th on our 4th anniversary is just way too cool to pass up.
Dude, I'm going to send an angry email over Schwa, man. Come on.
You know what? Here's the funny part, though. I letter the shows. You know, like when I put them down there, I don't know how I'm going to, because you can't do a Schwa-y on the keyboard, I don't think.
No, you can't.
So I'm going to have to spell it out. So it'll be 198 Schwa-y. That's the only way I can really do it. I didn't get that far in the planning of this, you know, and literally recorded the opening twice just so I could say Schwa-y, because I originally called this A, but now it's going to be Schwa-y. I'm going to have to come up with other names if we keep doing 198s, because we're going to have to probably do more than one 198 in order to reach our pledge drive goal. But I don't know. It's just funny. Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. This is actually the week where the new books are going to be released. So definitely check out DCBService.com for the up to 75% off on pre-orders for books. I just think that's so cool that I get giddy to try and see like what kind of different things they're going to be offering at discounts, especially when they're doing like special books. You know, like if it's the first issue of something or a special issue of something, they'll do limit 2 at 75% off. It's kind of a great way to get a discount on those books. So, and you can pick up a couple of them still for, you know, a collector that likes to have a copy that you just kind of don't do anything with and, you know, keep preserved perfect. You could buy 2 of those and you're still like at half off. That's crazy. So I really appreciate DCBService.com for providing those wonderful discounts. InStockTrades.com, we are going to be recording this weekend into next week JLA Avengers. And on that episode, we're going to be not only talking about the great JLA Avengers trade paperback, we're going to be talking about the recently released Justice League Crisis on Two Earths DVD. And you've seen that now, Jim?
Yes, I have.
Which was very cool. They had that Spectre short. Did yours have... It had the Spectre short on there?
No, it did not.
No?
I did not get the 2-disc special. I just got the 1-disc, and I did not have the Spectre short on it.
Did it have the preview for Batman Under the Red Hood?
Yes.
Okay, so you got to see that. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yes.
That looks very cool.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't have this... Oh, you'll have to come over and we'll watch this. You'll watch the Spectre short with me before we actually record. because you've got to see that. That's super cool. But, so we're going to talk about JLA Avengers, the 208-page trade paperback, Kurt Busiek, George Perez. We're also going to talk about that. We're going to be recording that next week. That's going to be our next show. So we'll be recording that one and getting that one out to you. I'm really excited to talk about JLA Avengers. We didn't forget about Preacher. We're going to come back to that, and we're going to get that in. Our goal is to get Preacher in before 200. So we're going to get that in this month, the last arc of Preacher, I should say, because we've already talked 2 stories of Preacher that were in that big hardcover. We're going to talk the last arc that was in there, and we'll get that in as well. I also would like to do another one of these Speeding Bullet style shows that we did. So lots of stuff to talk about over the next couple weeks. Too much good comics. But I want to thank InStockTrades.com. That trade paperback is $19.99 regularly, 47% off, only $10.59. Last chance to grab it. And I want to thank them for their sponsorship, both TCB Service and InStockTrades.com. We love your voicemails. We're talking about them on this episode. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. So that's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. And, Jim, we got some upcoming conventions we're going to be going to. The Summit City Comic Con, May 22nd. That's www.summitcitycomiccon.com. I think I'm going to hit that one, Jim. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
May 22nd. Chicago's C2E2, April 16th to the 18th. That's C2E2.com. We're going to have a table there, so we're going to definitely
we will
be at
be
C2.
in the podcast arena.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, 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 dun.
The CGS Super Show, March 27th to the 28th, comicgeekspeak.com/Super Show. And all of these are linked at ragingbullets.com. They're also in the show notes. So these are ones that we're going to be attending that I am super excited to be a part of. And you can also hear us on Get Your Geek On Radio. That's getyourgeekonradio.com, an online radio station committed to making geek chic. And we continue to be proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over some you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's go chalk some comics. Go ahead, you can say it. Yeah.
Let's go chalk some comics there.
I didn't say anything about your flub and your spoiler warning. I just let it go. But no, I deserve it for that one.
Come on.
I was going to edit it out and redo it, but it's funny. So it's going to stay. On second thought, we can chalk comics, talk comics, whatever. Let's just go and do it.
Balk comics. Yeah.
A scarlet costume ejects from his ring, and in a blur of motion, police scientist Barry Allen becomes the Flash.
Jim, before we jump into this segment, I actually wanted to give a shout out to Ty Tyner. Ty did our website. He actually made a template for me for a WordPress, and it's totally customized to our site with a great theme to it. And along the way, he kept showing me little previews of what it was going to look like, and now to actually see it in place, I was like, whoa. I'm really glad I'm using WordPress now. I'm trying to reorganize the site in a way that kind of makes more functional sense, and it's also easier for me as far as logging on, updating, and things like that, just to make the site a little bit more frequently updated and a little bit more current. And I'm able to do things like if I find something interesting on the DC blog or hear some interesting news, and can do quick posts like chatting about that. And it's kind of fun just to keep that interactivity going during the week when we're not recording. So I've been doing a lot of that lately. But I've got to give a major. Yeah, we do have a website. We do.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. When did you get one of those? Yeah.
But I mean, I know you've seen it. Doesn't that look fantastic?
Yeah, seriously, it looks outstanding. Definitely worthy of a.
Yeah, so thank you, Ty Tyner, for that, and there's a link to Ty Tyner's website right on our webpage, and I just want to thank him for taking the time to do that, because it was very, very cool that he put that together. Jim, one of the first books I want to talk about is The Shield #6.
Oh, yeah.
I was trained to fight, to hunt down my nation's enemies, and through superior tactics and the application of force, destroy them. The terrorists, the hostage takers, the soldiers of foreign powers hostile to the United States. And I'm just sitting there going over this, and I mean, Nazi war automata transporting prisoners of mangled UFOs, I'd call that a gap in my training. It's just great dialogue and personality in this book. This is a book that I didn't know how I was going to feel about these characters because they were brand new characters to me when DC acquired them, the Red Circle characters. And I was like, oh, am I going to get attached to them and all that? And this one, I'm like, is this Shield going to be Captain America Light? And then it turned out to be something so drastically different and unique. And I like that. I respect that about it. That we've got this soldier character, and even though he's a soldier and we've got Captain America's soldier background, these are very different characters, and I like that. We see Magog's a soldier, and all of these characters are just very unique and different explorations of a soldier.
With you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the different soldiers having different personalities. It really is. When you look at any military personnel, there's going to be a little bit difference between the different divisions, the different branches, the different type of personalities just that go into who the soldiers behind it. Yes, they have the same, if not similar, training, but it is the man behind the actions, the man inside the uniform that will ultimately determine what's going to happen. I like the fact that all of these different soldiers that you mentioned, all of these strong military backgrounds and personalities, there are some common kind of threads and themes to them, but they are not the same person. They are not cookie cutter. They are not, there is an individuality to this guy, and that was something that really drew me in. You said how you were worried he'd be Captain America Light. I was worried that he'd be just a walking stereotype of what the soldier is, the hoorah bravado type deal, and this guy, he has some of those elements where he's like, hoorah, knuckle up, time to do my job. And there are other times when you can see there is the man behind him. I love his interactions with his support team because any military is only as strong as its lines of support. It's only as strong as the intelligence they get, the backup, if you will. I was trying to avoid saying it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Just the mental, the physical, the emotional type support that he's getting from his team, is just a really cool part of this character and of this title. I'm really, really loving this book. This is one of those things where I will sit down and talk about this any day of the week, and I'd love to hear other people who's actually, if we got, anyone who's actually in the military, if you're reading this, let us know what you think about it. Because I would say this would be a very accurate representation of this guy and his life and his background. And I'm kind of curious to see if there's other people out there who would agree with me on that.
What I think is interesting to me, though, with these various military-based characters, and even when you look into books like Grade 10, which are soldiers of a sort, but for a different country, we're seeing different, and we've seen them in the Shield. We're seeing that there is nothing like one-dimensional. They're just as diverse as any other type of characters. I think I'm used to, when you're talking about the hoorah bravado, I'm used to the action movie military character, which is very much cookie cutter. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's action film. But I like that we're seeing like a more dynamic, a more in-depth exploration of what a soldier is. It's funny, when you were talking about backup, I think what's interesting about the backup in this is, yes, he's an agent working alone, but his backup isn't physically there with him in most cases. His backup is mental support, in the sense where he can call them and get advice, he can get direction, he can get leadership, and that's the kind of backup that he's getting. It's a different sort of approach than like calling in a team. He calls for advice, calls for suggestions, and I think it's just an interesting dynamic in that. It's like a mentor, in a general and that type of thing that's kind of leading him, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're going to actually go with the fire support, the artillery and or guided cruise missiles, where he's actually on the site and he's lasering, using the laser sightings for this missile or something. If he's ever going to call in a fire mission, because that is a very common thing with when you have a military operation going on. If you're kind of, hammered and you're kind of covered and you need that heavy artillery firing in, you call for it. And I'm wondering if, just by the nature of who he is, if he wouldn't call in that.
I don't see that. See, I see him more as being a specialized operative. They call him into missions where you don't want to send in a team. You want to send in like the one man to deal with the situation. I'm not saying that we'll never see him, because we have actually seen him working with other soldiers in the book. Just to me, I think one of the things that, like in the mission, for example, that we saw here, he didn't call in backup because he wanted to avoid an international incident. So they had him handle it himself. I wonder if we're going to see him more specialized like this throughout. He does lend himself, though, like you're saying, to a variety of storytelling options based on the missions that they give him. So I wouldn't say that that's out of the realm of possibility if Troutman decided to write a mission like that, where it would make sense. That's one of the neat things about the character. You're right, he is very flexible and diverse to pretty much so any type of military engagement that you could imagine, whether it's covert, quiet, secret, or more in your face.
It's funny how appropriate it is that the writer's Troutman when that was the name of the colonel from the whole Rambo series.
Oh, jeez. I didn't even associate that. I'm pretty sure
it's a different spelling, but it's still, I as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome.
I want to talk about the art direction of the series, because one of the things, they have a preview image up of an upcoming issue, and I liked it so much from the source that I linked to it on our website and just talked about what I'm really enjoying about this. The clever use of variety of panel shapes and styles lend to a very dynamic visual presentation. Everything is bordered with circuits and shield symbols that almost give this concept of the book being framed almost within the suit, which was interesting to me as I was looking through. I'm like, wow, it just feels like the book is encased in the suit. And I loved the styling of it. It's got its own flavor, and they're playing around with what you can do with panel shapes, and I get into that. It's a very stylized book.
It definitely liked when they kind of tweak some things, do it a little bit different. This is a title that you could probably have a little bit more flexibility with, have a little bit more fun, let your artists kind of, flex their creative muscle and say, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And you can get away with a lot more. And I agree with, what you said about those pens. It looks really sharp, and I'm looking forward to actually getting it in my hands and, kind of delving deeply into it.
Colorist in front of the show Art Lyons on this book, and it's one of those, it's just got a lot of mood, tone, and atmosphere all the way through. It's just a great art team, and that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying about it. I love the whole meeting with the new Jaguar in this arc, traveling through the Brazilian jungle, the use of stealth and intelligence gathering to determine what is the best method. The concept that he is a soldier and not trying to be a superhero adds a different storytelling to the dynamic. Because I like that this isn't, I'm not trying to eventually become a superhero. I am a soldier. This is who I am. And I like that distinction. And that's something that's different. I like that his internal dialogue has him confident and likable as well. Higgins is growing more and more interesting. I wasn't sure, how, like I said, how I'd feel about these characters, but I'm growing more and more into them, particularly this character right now. The reprogramming of the Nazi robot, that'll get you in trouble with your bosses, won't it? Not really. I reprogrammed the robot. It should take them a few hundred miles in the wrong directions. You coming? And it's just some great little moments where it's tongue-in-cheek, but it doesn't go too far for this particular character and what we're going for here. And it's a book I'm digging because of that. The whole using the war suit to post image data outside itself as a camouflage worked. I like that Jaguar acknowledged that the war suit makes shields stick out in the jungle, and it was really cool that the task of doing that required a great deal of concentration and suit resources. This was something that was new, it was experimental, he was trying this out to see if it was going to work, and he knew it was a limited time thing. The internal dialogue again, making us feel like we're inside the suit as well. This really matched up nicely with the art. Because of attacks on both countries and the new technology, China's Great 10 is also hunting the Nazi tech. For Baron Gestapo, this is about returning fear to the Nazi name. Political drama is always interesting. The wrong political move can lead to war, yet you don't want another country to get the war tech advantage either. This is where establishing supergroups from various countries becomes very interesting. I think cruel scientific experiments are scary and creepy. The horror comes from altering someone from the inside, changing them genetically or adding tech that controls them, taking away the person that once was. I find it more horrifying than torture. S.H.I.E.L.D. recognizing the Baron as a monster and seeing these experiments on humans really hit me. I think it was because the suit allowed him to see and analyze the tiny details of what was done on the fly, that it added like a whole creepy mood and tone to the whole thing, which was really great. And that we see like this Baron Gestapo characters appearing in JSA. So I love how this, again, a whole universe feel.
Yeah, with one of the things that I kind of like, I don't know if it's more of a vibe I was getting from it, but he could, you're saying how it kind of hit home for him. You think about it. He in himself is just this giant experiment going on. Now, granted, he isn't being forced into it. He volunteered for it. This is, he feels like it's his duty as a soldier and all that type of deal. But it is kind of an experimentation. They don't really know exactly how his body is going to react long term to this suit. So for him, I could imagine him looking at these people being, the sick stuff that was going on with him, and see himself like, if the chips had fallen wrong for me, that could be me. I could be dealing with something like that right now.
Except here's the difference. I would not hesitate to try that suit on and to take the chance with that suit. Because, I mean, look what you can do with it, and you can fly with it. So I could see that being something that somebody would volunteer for, or even if you don't, circumstances, go with what happened to him, circumstance leading you to be the shield, you still got this vibe like, wow, look at all the things I can do now because of this. The creepy part about this, these were dead bodies. We don't know how they died. And we talked about this on the show once before. I'm with you, Jim. I want to be cremated now, so there's no way they can use me for evil purposes other than to put me in a coffee filter as a cruel joke at Starbucks. Although, the Morning Norge blend does have a nice ring to it. Imagine being brewed, put in a nice non-fat milk, just a hint of cinnamon and whipped cream. Man, I sound good. That's it, I'm changing my will. But anyway, back to Baron Gestapo.
That's just wrong, man. That's just wrong. Come on.
No,
if you're going to do anything,
No, but seriously, that's the type of thing, though. These are people that were dead. There is no benefit for them. And we all wonder, like, if you were brought back in these type of circumstances, would you be coherent? Would you know what was going on? Is there a subconscious that's aware of what's happening? Because all of our religion's faith-based, we really don't know what happens after you die. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
in a sense like that. So let's say I had a creepy reality, this whole thing. What if, when these experiments come on, there's still enough of you left that you're subconsciously aware of what's going on around you? I mean, that's the creep factor to me of what's going on there. Whereas with the shield, with that suit, I never get that vibe. I really dug that the villain in this, Baron Gestapo, what he was doing, really creeped me out. And that was, a lot of that was due to sitting there with the shield, feeling like I was in the suit with him, and exploring that. I think that, to me, is where this book is really working. Visually, it makes me feel like I'm encased in the suit. His dialogue, a lot of times, and the fact that we get to internally, because it's so intimate with him, we get to internally see the things that he's doing when he's experimenting with the suit and all that. I get just a creepy vibe from the whole thing when he's looking at some of these villain situations. And that's what's great about it, because I like him. I like Higgins, and I do feel like I'm hanging with him. I like that they bring us in the suit sometimes. It's a cool book that way. The art sequence of Baron Gestapo's dark vision of the future, and how much he thirsts to destroy America and replace it with Nazi ideals. I love the variety of cultures in our world. And villains remind us that there are a lot of people that want to run over the cultural mix and to homogenize the world. And that really angers me. I watched a video with my kids called People, where and one of the things that they've got to learn about is other cultures, how other cultures have influenced America, how the whole melting pot concept of having everybody brought in has influenced America, but also just to appreciate other cultures from all over the world, and how the fact that they're even there means that we can pull off of those various cultural influences, and we all change and adapt and evolve to those. When you see stuff like that about homogenizing the world and making it one type of ideal and one type of culture and all that, it really does anger me and all that. And this story really hit me on that. This reminds us of the dark places of humanity. And I really wanted to rally behind the shield here. This book is a lot of what I liked about Checkmate and similar titles like that. Intrigue, action, espionage, political drama. 6 issues in, and the Shield is really coming together. And this has been a book where it's been gradually increasing my interest level as it's been going on. Like, I started off very tentative from the one shot, and then, as the series kicked off, my interest has been growing gradually. It's like climbing a set of steps. And it's really like, I feel like I'm at the top of the steps now, ready to the second floor of this one, where I'm like, I'm very comfortable here now. That's the comfortable area of your house, usually, the second floor. Where you hang out, and we don't, usually let a lot of people in there. Well, I'm there with the Shield now. This is one of those books that, in the end, S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't wind up with the tech, but then again, neither did the Great 10. It reminded me of James Bond and the Russians at the end of For Your Eyes Only. It was just kind of a cool book, and this whole thing just kind of wound together. So I really wanted to talk about issue 6 of this book because I'm like, all right, I'm getting into this now. And S.H.I.E.L.D's exciting me to the point where when it started out, I was reading like a couple issues together at a time. It was one of those that, it was in my stack. I was glad it was there. But, when I would get busy on a month, that might be a book that slips to when the next issue comes out and I read a couple of them. This is now a book that it's going to be in my initial read-through stack as it comes out. It's gotten to that level now. And it's nice to see that growth after 6 issues because, especially with a new character, to get that kind of attachment in 6 issues for me, I just think that's impressive. And I think that's something the creative team's doing very well because it's such a great creative team. It's not just the writing, it's not just the art, it's all of it.
Yeah, this is a strong meshing of what each can give into the story and all that kind of deal. It's funny because as you're talking, I'm just quietly sitting or listening to you, nodding my head, and I forgot that, hey, Jim, this is a audio podcast and you have to speak up. But I was just sitting there going, yeah, all right, testify. Because, I got to agree with you. This is a character that he is so solid in my stack and in my, pull list and whatnot that if I had to cut some titles, this wouldn't even be in consideration for it. I'm getting a lot of fun and a lot of enjoyment out of him. I loved seeing just a universal tie-in with this guy. I would like to see him deal with some of the other teams. I would love to see him in JSA, him in the JLA as well. That'd be kind of some neat stuff there. I just I'm enjoying what I'm getting right now, but I am thinking long-term type stuff where maybe his appearance in the JSA title or his appearance with the JLA, or even he stops by Gotham for some reason and has an interaction with Batman.
I do it to get him noticed. My only concern there would be one of the things I like. I don't want that to overrun the main title, because I think what I'm liking right now is I talk so much about the intimacy of getting to know the character here. So I'm not disputing. I agree with you, because I think what would be good about doing things like that is just getting the character notice. So I think that's cool that he would appear in those books, and just for the reasons that you're stating. So I'm with you dead on. I don't want this. I don't want that to turn and overdone to the point where we lose these intimate moments, because this issue hit me not because of guest appearances or anything. I mean, the Great 10 thing was cool because it was so much a part of the story, but I think it was great because it kind of developed the Great 10 some, it developed him some, but we didn't lose the intimacy with Higgins. And it's funny, if you had asked me a few issues ago what his name is, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Now I know him as Higgins. I know him as the Shield. Like, I care about both identities. I'm getting into the character, and I think that's the sign too that this actually matters to me. That I'm rattling off both variations of the name. He's not just Shield and one-dimensional to me anymore. He's fleshing out. The Inferno backup I want to shout out really quick because I haven't I've been enjoying it, but it's been this is a nice bonus, but I haven't been really through the roof. Now the new Inferno story kicked off last issue. And this one is more interesting to me now. Now I'm starting to get into this as well. We see Frank Verano trying to discover why his memories are gone, who did the things to him that made him Inferno and put him on the run. He's after Halliday, who he believes did this to him. Yet when he meets, Halliday. Yet when he meets Halliday after a run-in with Comet, he is offered a job working for him. And, General Latham tells Frank to go with it. They are trying to bring Halliday down. And I think what's working for me right here, there is this whole gray area as far as, is Halliday legit? Is Latham to be trusted? What will Frank learn when his memories come back? Are both of them suspect? It seems like there is a lot of various departments here, from Halliday's company to the various military people and different ops groups and things like that. Who is to be trusted and why? And I'm glad this second arc happened because, I was enjoying Inferno, but, if they dropped it out of the book, I wouldn't have been shedding a tear. These last 2 issues have me saying, okay, I'm excited for when Inferno, because the Fox backup's the next issue. Yeah. But I'm genuinely excited for Inferno's return now in issue 11, which is unexpected for me. Because when I was seeing these previews of these other backups that they were doing, or these other characters they were introducing, like Comet and now the Fox and all that stuff, I was like, okay, cool, because we can juggle these around a little bit. Now I want to see Inferno back, so that's kudos to that team for kind of turning me around there. Because before I wasn't really heavily invested in Inferno. Now I'm into the character enough that I do want to see him back in issue 11, and I'm actually curious to have some of my questions answered about some of the intrigue and mystery going on with him. So this is even the backups coming together in this book. So
what I'm doing with the backup is because I wasn't completely woohoo excited, and I was like, oh, okay. I started just stockpiling the backups features. I would just read the Shield stuff, and then once I saw that we had a full arc or a couple issues of the Inferno stuff, then I would go back through and I would read just the Inferno section of the Shield. So I was actually treating it like a separate comic. And I think having the longer story, reading more than one story at a time, was really helping my enjoyment of Inferno. But I gotta so I.
Did you find that you then enjoyed the first arc more?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely enjoyed it a lot more when I read everything together than when I was reading it piece at a time. Because I found when I was reading it, because with S.H.I.E.L.D., I never stockpiled these. I really just kept going, and because he was a character that I really just locked into. I felt like I was like, okay, yeah, I'm liking this guy. This is the kind of superhero I would like to be. If I was ever to get, some way to become a superhero, this is the kind of guy I would like to actually be. So I'm like, okay, I could get into this guy. I could see myself as him and vice versa and whatnot. So I was really into the Shield, but I was like, every time I go into the Inferno, I was like, okay, I was reading it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stockpile the Inferno stuff. So that's something I enjoyed doing with that.
Jim, there's another book I'd like to talk about real quick. Warlord number 11. I really wanted to shout out this issue and how much I enjoy the artwork of Mike Grell. This has been a series since they relaunched the Warlord. I've been loving every single issue. And it's, to me, another book that's only gotten better, but my heart has been in it since the get-go. This is an important issue to me because it fills in many of the blanks on how the series wound up here from the previous series. But I liked it because there was an accessibility of bringing everybody up to speed. Travis Morgan was supposed to be the savior ruler of Shambhala, but it all went wrong. We see the relationship with Deimos, who is like his arch nemesis, and Travis's son, where the son was aged into adulthood and Travis was forced to kill him. That split second of being forced to kill his kid playing over in his mind. How he wishes the sword that the son was pulling on him, he let it fall versus, shooting the kid. I mean, just those type of things, because he would have died instead. And just, instinct when you're a warrior and you've gone through fights to defend yourself in those moments, you could see how what Travis went through would happen and how that would prey on him saying, if I had it to do over again, I would never sacrifice my kid. It was one of those things where I could see that being a warrior's instinct. The idea of a reckoning with the evil wizard who took so much away from him, the build to his home being attacked by Deimos using ancient technology combined with a dragon. And I like this kind of idea that it's modern high-tech and future tech mixed with magic, and how wizards and this world really has a different a different sense of magic and technology kind of warping together. And it does feel like something that's otherworldly, and yet you can sit there and say, wow, they have some really neat things there. It reminds me kind of like what I liked about Star Wars, the first 4, 5, and 6, was how it felt like the ships and the technology felt a little gritty, felt like, yes, it was advanced, but yet was accessible, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I like the differences. Like, I'm a big Star Trek fan too. Star Trek's very clean in most cases, where everything's clean and the suits are all shiny. Everything is so the ships are all shiny and clean. I'm talking about the Federation stuff. Yeah. When you get into Star Wars, though, everything looks like it was put together with bolts and all kinds of other stuff.
There's space dust. You get a little grimy. You got some some blast damage on your X-wings. It's it looks real. It looks used. It looks living. I'm a Star Trek fanatic, but there is that clean cut, just that pristine cleanliness that is the Federation stuff, which whenever they would do like away missions and the various other planets, I kind of like seeing things get a little bit grittier and just a little bit down to earth. And that was the realism of Star Wars movies, that it was the suspension of disbelief, because it reminded you of, seeing them hang out, at some bar, reminded you of a bar you and your friends may hang out at. Now, granted, it may not have as cool a band, and you wouldn't have to worry about someone drawing first and shooting you, but you still had that same ambiance that we got from the the bar scene.
And they have a more diverse playlist. But
yeah.
But what I was thinking of I'm a big fantasy nut. I love fantasy fiction. And the one thing I like about the marriage of, this fantasy world with magic and how it all comes together is it's got that kind of clean fantasy majesty that is reminiscent of a Star Trek, where everything's clean and all that, yet it gets gritty and dirty like a Star Wars. It's got like a nice blend of that. There's some bits in there where I'm like, ooh, we're getting down to it here. And I like that. It's got the best of that type of thing, in this kind of sci-fi fantasy twist that I'm really liking. I love that Morgan has faults. He settled into a nice family life, and this let Demos take advantage of him and change his world. Being a great leader is lonely, and I couldn't find fault in what Travis did, where he was kind of, doing the family light thing. But I could also see how guilt would weigh on him, because he's looking back and finding mistakes at every stage in his life where he's like, geez, if I had seen this, if I had known this, would I have handled this differently? Would I have been less selfish? And is that really selfish to want a family life and to be attracted to that? I don't know. I can see where, why isn't he allowed that as a leader? But then as a leader, because he has those leadership responsibilities, does he then have to put himself above all that? And I love how that preyed on him. And you could get really philosophical and deep with it, where you can, depending on your mood when you're reading this, you could either be totally understanding and sympathetic of Morgan in those moments, or being like, you idiot, of course Demos did this to you. You let him in, because you got lazy. And I mean, that's the kind of cool thing where you can see it on a lot of different levels from a lot of different perspectives. And that, again, talking about storytelling that jumps out of the page at you, the artwork is just stunning. I can't recommend this book enough for the action fantasy visual piece. If you aren't picking up Warlord, now's an excellent time, because I'm looking at issue number 11, and this is a very accessible issue. You can really pick this up, and it gives you a nice little primer on, hey, this is what's up. And I like how each issue seems to be just bringing you into this expanding story. And so issue number 11 is one that, if you're like, I've been kind of thinking about trying it, I could see you picking that issue up and just kind of getting kind of a flavor of the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely a good jumping on spot. And this is, Warlord is that title that, for me, first time they tried launching it, I was like, I didn't really get into it. This time, I'm hook, line, and sinker. I'm in deep with it. Got to echo all your sentiments. And for me, it's funny because you see a lot of the Star Trek. I see more of the fantasy aspect of it. And it is a meshing and a blending of the two. But for me, it is that whole going back to the days of old, where you're riding horses and you're slinging down with swords and crossbows. Even though there is that tech, there is that magic, but this is kind of like reading a Dungeons and Dragons comic book from my childhood. Used to do D&D all the time as a kid, and when I read stories that have this fantasy feel to it, it kind of takes me back to that. And this has that great that great feel for me. And I gotta agree, just echo 100% the sentiment on the artwork. This is just a really, really beautiful book that it's on the second and third read-throughs are definitely, not reading the words, just enjoying the artwork.
And to me, this is one of those books I'm like, I get a lot of value out of this book. Because I love the story. And I'm with you on that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't get a fantasy vibe on it, because I've talked about this book previously, and my discussions have been all fantasy. It was interesting when I was seeing issue number 11. I'm like, this is kind of cool, because I'm getting just a little bit of a different something that's kind of connecting with me on this. This book has just connected with me on a variety of different levels throughout its run. And I just, every issue of it, I'm just more and more intrigued. I'm more into it. It's very different from anything else that I'm reading. And that's something that I'm really grabbing. I'm a big Conan fan. I'm reading Dark Horse's Conan book. and I'm really having a lot of fun with that, and having Warlord in that mix. I'm just getting this really cool kind of fantasy vibe from comics that I think is just really great. And Warlord is just a top tier book for me. I think it's just an interesting. So I recommend this to anybody who's like, I just would like something a little different in my reading library. I'd like to try it. Issue 11's a good trial issue. It's not, maybe it's not for you. It's not your cup of tea. But if you've been remotely curious to see if, hey, I've only been reading superhero books, I haven't tried anything like this, I'd like to give it a shot. It's a good book to give it a shot on, because it really is a nice little primer, kind of like because there's a lot of action in it, but then there's a lot of story development too, and a lot of just rich history brought in where it's very accessible. Jim, I want to talk really quick, just a quick shout out to Rebels number 13. Are you digging this Starro epic? Because it's an epic. It's a big, big story.
Dude, I am loving this. When just the reimagining of who and what Starro is, the dealings with Brainiac, with dealings with his kid. I was just like, I'm loving this whole, just this very messed up family dynamic that he has. Having the quote unquote hero who I really want to slap and smack around a couple times, and it's just, I'm drawn into this. I'm sitting there and I'm laughing at myself, going, the stuff that annoyed you about this comic earlier are now some of the stuff you're really digging and you're really into. And I've made a complete, twist and turn on this. I wasn't like boo hiss Rebels, but I wasn't excited about it. I didn't, it was put to the back of the burner. I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. When I was looking at my pull list, I was thinking, I can probably drop it. I'll try one more. And then once just this story, that annual, and then the story arc and everything's going on, I'm like, I'm in for Rebels, wondering what's going to happen in the future, where this is going to go, and it's yes.
That like Starro annual to me was the grenade that went off that like, blew the series out of the water for me, because I was like, whoa, what is going on here? I'm glad this crossed in and out of Blackest Night, but I'm glad it did it in such a way where it didn't derail anything. It did it in a way that makes sense. We're still seeing elements of what happened due to it in the series, but yet the things that were there before in this giant like space opera epic is just continuing. We got to see the depth of the need that Starro has to try and find a true opponent who can defeat him. And I love that came out of the Blackest Night arc and all that. He's more obsessed with that than conquering the galaxy. I recommend on the highest level the Rebels Annual again to anyone new to the series. It's self-contained, shows the motivations that make this villain so interesting. I love that you never know who to trust and that alliances are fragile. Even with the group that Vril Dox is working with, Adam Strange, Comet, Omega Men, and even most of Vril's crew, they can be trusted, but none of them really like him.
Hey, there's some beyond not liking.
Some hate him. Some of them outright hate him. Yeah. Despero, though, Kanjaro, the Dominator, they would turn on him in an instant. Yet they all have a reason to be banded together to bring down Starro. His son, Brainiac 3, remains an interesting wild card. He seems to want to take down Starro, but is this because he's a good guy or ultimately because he feels he can? He's manipulating Starro's General Smite into helping his cause. He teleports Starro to where Dad and his gang are waiting. But it's interesting that he broke his dad's arm to keep him from being the one to shoot Starro. Now, why does he want to save Dad's life? Does he want to save Dad? Does he have his own revenge in mind later? Is it all, does he see some purpose for Dad in using him? Because you can take nothing at face value in this book. And that's what I love, too, that it's really just an interesting exploration in very, very strong manipulative personalities that are trying to one-up each other, and alliances of convenience, alliances of need are quickly formed, forged, and lost. And I could see people that are buddies in this arc. The next story that they did, and I say arc, and it's a big epic right now, but when, there is a resolution to this and the storytelling continues, I see this being something where alliances of convenience now could be your bitter enemy in the next arc. People who are your enemies now could be your best friend in the next arc. If Starro is taken down, his generals what are their roles going to be? Because those are characters that have been incredibly well fleshed out. Will they stay together? Will some of them become good? Will some of them become bad? Will they be all gray areas? I don't know. And that's the interesting thing. I am intrigued by so many characters in this series that it's a testament to how well they're crafting the cosmic universe. I was enjoying a lot of what Starlin was doing in crafting a look at the greater DC Cosmic Universe. Tony Bedard now has taken this series and really run with that and just gone to a completely different level of interest as far as just giving this feeling of how big, because really Blackest Night was a footnote for them. They're still going on with this huge Starro thing, but I love that because of Blackest Night, it explains why Earth has been so isolated from the events of this. Because there's been a big bubble and they're dealing with those huge events. Starro the Conqueror is making his way to Earth for these reasons. But it does explain why he's been under the radar of the Green Lantern Corps and people like that, because they're tied up and busy.
Yeah.
I like that. It's a great creative way to use the events of the DC Universe as a way to explain how this war can be going on without the help that you would traditionally expect of allies from Earth, because they're basically taken out of the game.
Yeah,
it's neat, and it's something that is just working, and it's something I love about this being such a well put together universe that DC's doing right now. There's not one single book that I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying a lot of the exploration, which means there's something for everybody. For people on a budget are sitting there saying, you know what, I kind of want to read something with a little bit. You could read Rebels. And really, you don't need to be reading anything else to be reading Rebels, yet you're getting a huge sprawling epic in this book.
Yeah, I was thinking with Junior, because you hit one of the comments you said about how it's cross, double cross, you never know who to trust and why they're doing it. With Junior, I'm thinking solely not revenge against his dad. He's thinking long term for himself. If Brainy, if Viral actually defeats Starro, that's going to make him just, viewed as the general population as this great hero and this great champion, which I think is something, Junior would want to kind of be in that type of position. You think, how Viral had that whole, his Legion stuff where it was, a protection agency. I'm thinking Junior wants to run that, and he knows that if his dad defeats Starro, then he's going to be in charge of that operation. And the son's like, no, I want to be ahead of that.
Yeah, it's that's what I mean, and I'm not just even talking about dad and son. I think there's a lot of characters in this where you're going to see all kinds of different relationships that are forged and friendships that will change throughout this series. I think his crew that he's currently running with, what's that relationship going to look like when all this is done? And who are those people going to side with, and where are they going to go? I don't know, because we've already seen multiple changes to the crew.
Yeah, but Kanjar is going to be double-crossing people, and...
Oh, yeah, and Despero,
Despero, come on.
Yeah.
As soon as he's got a full, really functioning body and he's everything good to go, it's everything...
Well, he does have the functioning body. We saw that in that issue, But, for right now, sticking with this crew is serving his purpose. And he will stick with them for right now because his thirst for revenge and his anger towards Starro is worth keeping these alliances together.
Now, how funny would it be that if Viral gave him this new body but is able to take it away from him? So once he'd
do that too.
Defeated, he takes away the body and he's back to being just a head. And he's like, dang it! I'm like, you didn't think I'd let you leave here with the body I gave you? Come on. Well, and you put him in a little shelf, put him on the shelf, and while he naturally regenerates his body, just do whatever they're going to do with it.
The Dominator even makes multiple comments, though, about utilizing, basically threatening people if they walk away from this crew. Threatening their lives and, all that stuff. And I love how Vril, who technically, you're right, quote-unquote hero of the story, which I don't know that that's necessarily even a good label for him. I would put down main character of the story. I don't know that you can label him a true traditional hero. But I do like that he just kind of was like, you got the right idea. This is kind of what I want from you. And that totally is something you would expect from him. Jim, the next book, and you were ready to go here before, Superman World of New Krypton, number 12. This series ended you got to use that term loosely, but I really liked World of New Krypton.
Oh yeah, dude! I was so pumped with this final issue that, I loved once seeing Clark and Zod work together. I do enjoy seeing that. Just, at any given time, because we just talked about double cross and just alliances changing. In a heartbeat that these two are going to be throwing down again. They're going to be pounding on each other, and it's just that anticipation of it. And even in some of their dialogue between each other, they know what's going to happen. But they know right now they both have the same goal. They both want to protect New Krypton. They both want their people to have their second chance and just to thrive. It's just that end result, how you get to the people thriving is, the two different things. It's the two different base philosophies that are going to come to a head. But throughout this issue, leading these two working together, I really like seeing that. I like seeing just the deductive reasoning behind Clark as he and Zod are just putting the final pieces together when they finally identify who the true bad guy is on who's causing these assassinations, who's actually trying to undermine the New Krypton society. I thought that was just some really cool moments that it's funny because whenever I see Clark doing any type of deductive work or detective work, I do immediately think, oh yeah, he's friends with Batman. But then I got to stop and catch myself because he's an investigative reporter. He does have that same type of mindset. He's not the world's greatest detective, but he does have that seeker of the truth, the exposure of the false type of deal.
But he's got a rich history as a reporter.
Yeah.
Because that murder investigation, you're right, is quite good. I enjoyed the evidence being played out again for Clark and Zod. Clark starts to realize that a cabal was formed, and they genuinely thought they were doing what was best for New Krypton, but in reality they were weakening it. Will this prove to be the undoing of New Krypton? Will the War of the Superman be kicked off with the disruption of New Krypton, or will they survive this? I don't know. Just thoughts were going through my head, and you're right, it's the years of rich history as a reporter. He has years of practice and training and street-level training at being a reporter. We forget that when we think of him in the cape and being Superman and outdoing that thing, but we keep forgetting how much he's done as Clark Kent.
Yeah, and just I love just the writing of Zod. I really do. Zod is another one of those Lex Luthor villains for me, where they're not just the cookie cutter, I want to conquer the universe, I want to kill lots of people. There is that kind of that goal that there are some good intent behind his actions. He wants to protect his people. Everybody has a right to be safe and secure. The question is, what method, how are you going to protect your people? Are you going to protect them by forming alliances and, positive relationships with your neighbors? Or are you going to protect your people by destroying your neighbors? And that is the fundamental, kind of difference between, the two ideologies. Now, granted, right now, Zod did kind of do his separation, but it is part of a building. He wants to strengthen up his people. He wants to get them ready and set for the pending attack that he knows is probably going to happen from Earth. He knows General Lane's going to throw down with him, so he's trying to get ready. And I really ate that up. Throughout this series, I really found myself even more liking Zod. I've always been a Zod fan when he's handled, correctly, when it's, this character, this military general who, yes, he's willing to kill. Yes, he's willing to kill innocent lives if he has to, but there is that, in his mindset, there is that, goodness, there is that positive goal behind his actions. And I like seeing that duality, especially as it got fleshed out through this issue.
The issue kicked off with that Adam Strange Zeta beaming away from Gore and a potential life or death situation. I did like seeing the Starro reference in the one panel.
Yeah.
With the space lanes of the DC Universe so controlled by the Conqueror at the moment, it's a tiny detail that for me that added to the whole universe feel, and I thought it was like a nice touch. Because they didn't have to do it because it's a Superman book, and they just could have kind of left that out. But to me, it's like how Rebels acknowledge Blackest Night and how other books are. To me, you can do that in such a way where you're not derailing storylines, and this fits here. Tamor's death. I beg to differ. You were fast, yes, but so are speeding bullets. Nice reference to what we all, faster than a speeding bullet with Clark. And Gore is ready to potentially kill Clark when Zod shows on the scene. Again, those interesting political moments where, like it or not, or like him or not even, there is something to admire about Zod. He stands in the face of Counselor Zoe, who is obviously corrupt on some level, and because Gore is under Zod's command, Zod demotes him. He ordered no lethal force, and Gore was disobeying him due to the counselor. Zod can't have his people disobeying him. So it wasn't even that Zod was looking at whether or not he agreed with the motivations behind what Gore did, whether or not he was even mortified or moral questions of what Gore did. It has nothing to do with that. With Zod, it's all about, I'm in charge, and you are not on any level going to dispute my authority. You're not going to go outside my commands. If you had a question on this, you should have contacted me first, gotten my authorization. If I said it was okay, then you move. If I don't say it's okay, you don't. And it flies in the face of who he is that Gore didn't do that, and that he was taking commands from this Counselor Zoe. I just ate this up because even though he is quote-unquote a villain to us, there is something compelling about the consistency of his character here, and it doesn't fly in the face of the villain that we're so used to, because this is what we know of Zod when we see him as a bad guy, and I like that because there's nothing that's changed here. He can go back to being Clark's nemesis like you were talking about earlier, and nothing has changed because of this, yet we see him in a different light because the situation is different. And to me, it adds something interesting to the character that we haven't seen too much of, and I like that. It makes New Krypton, to me, a far more interesting place, and that's what this series has been about for me. It's about getting to really feel like we're walking around on Krypton, and Clark is our eyes into the place, because he's just as much a fish out of water trying to get to know his people as we are. And how cool is that for 12 issues, we got to see Krypton with Clark, learn about Krypton with Clark. Because Superman's one of those characters that sometimes he's written in a way where he is so much this godlike character that we look up to him as readers. And you can't get down on the level with him where you're hanging with him. And this is one of those stories where it took us to a level where Clark didn't lose anything in it, yet we got to hang with him, get into his mind, see his moral code in the face of people who have similar powers, but yet don't have his upbringing, don't have his world experience, his life experiences. And that, to me, has been the joy of this series. And in reading it for 12 issues has been like, man, I got to hang with Clark. And it was cool. I get these moments with Bruce Wayne, too, where it's kind of like, there's certain issues that are written in such a way where you're into Bruce's internal dialogue and you feel like you're hanging with him and chatting with him, like you're his confidant. I felt like I was Superman's confidant in this, and I liked it.
Yeah, throughout these 12, one of the things that I got to just say, throughout these 12 issues, I have loved seeing just his influence on the other Kryptonians and just seeing them look at life and look at how they deal with things, completely different than they did before. I thought that for me was one of those cool moments where, because we take for granted because all we know about Clark, all we know about Superman, we understand who he is and what he's about because we get all the behind the scenes. The everyday hero, the everyday person, do not know the little nooks and crannies that make him so cool. Seeing these Kryptonians get to deal with it at first and get to understand him. And by the end of this, he's got a team that not only understands who he is, what he's about, but they throw down for him. And I'd find it very interesting, curious to see when Clark and Zod actually do throw down, what his team will do. I want to know if Red Shard will back him or if they will stay with General Zod, because I think we could get some of these people actually throwing down with Clark, saying, hey, we got to let this play out, we got to see how this happens, we got his back, he is our commander, he may be the general, but this is still our commander, this is our unit. And I really want to see if that's going to happen.
I love that you were, like, describing Clark as the Thomas's English muffin of the DC universe. You're like, with all of his nooks and crannies and that the people were getting into them, it's like they can put cinnamon on him and maybe a little bit of jam, and it'll be... Anyway, Rykin, that, or it's Wriqin. It's interesting to see the diverse dynamics on New Krypton. This guy wanted political control and power on New Krypton post Lane's takeover. He was actually helping weaken New Krypton to take over. The sad part was that this goof doesn't realize Lane would have turned on him the second that New Krypton was taken over. Lane makes relationships of convenience with some of his allies. He wouldn't trust an ally when this is over. Lane would definitely kill him. I loved that Clark was playing possum. He set up Rykin to get a confession over killing the rest of the Cabal, a deal they made supposedly to save their planet. Imagine being so afraid of war that you are ultimately willing to side with another race and to betray your own people. Imagine being so greedy for power that you would see your own species. I mean, basically, you would sell out your own species, basically. It's just an interesting, different mindset. Because I could never see myself going to that point where I could sell out my species. You know what I mean? I mean, there's. I think that's just lower than low for personal gain, and also for the fact that terror and fear and all that. I mean, that's a whole new level of cowardice. I could see. There's people who run away from a battle because you're not a combatant, you're not a fighter, and that type of thing. And that to me is okay. You're scared. And, okay, people might call that person a coward. Okay, maybe I get that. Another person might call them a survivor. You could go either way on that. This is pure cowardice. There's no two ways of it, to the point where he is going so out of his way to save himself that he's willing to throw his entire species, or a lot of his species, under the bus to make sure that he somehow is in the back seat of it. Because that's really what it is. Lane would be running the show. He would just be a figurehead. You know what he'd be like? Lex Luthor of Australia from Superman 2.
Yeah.
Where it's like Lex Luthor, ruler of Australia, and he never really gets Australia. You know what I mean? Lane keeps trying to kill him along the way, but he finds one more way to just kind of hang on, thinking that maybe he'll get another island or something like that. He'll get Hawaii or something along the way as well. He reads like that. The Zod and Kal-El moments at the end were pretty geek out. He admires what Clark has accomplished and genuinely agrees that they both want to better the people. Their survival of New Krypton is something that they have in common. Even though they're deeply philosophically different in the way they would approach anything, they do have that common bond of wanting to save the people. And it is something right now where Zod, I don't think Zod is playing the fact that he was glad that he had Kal-El and saw the benefit of having Kal in that position. He is a strategic leader. And no doubt he would so turn on Clark and, do everything he can to take him down and all that when it served his purpose. But in this particular case, he's like, no, as a general, as a leader, you are a resource and an asset that is nothing but value. If I want to up my strategic game, to have you in place doing these things is only going to better my people. It's going to better my position and ultimately help me accomplish my goals in a way that is more efficient. That is a strong strategic leader. And we get to see that mental aspect of Zod, which makes him far more interesting, I think. And it makes him, to me, more intimidating of a villain when we do see that come later down the road. Because we know it's going to happen, but this type of Zod, to me, is far creepier, far more dangerous than a Zod who is a clean-cut villain. This one, we respect his intelligence and what he's capable of doing. And, all that's all great and well and fine, and they almost have a hugging moment until Brainiac shows up.
Yeah.
And, the final issue of this mini leads right into the last stand of New Krypton. Do you see New Krypton? What is your hypothesis? Do you see New Krypton being destroyed from this, or do you see it somehow surviving, Jim? Do you have a hypothesis there?
I'm thinking we're going to see the destruction of New Krypton, but not the death of all its people. I'm thinking that this, the big brainy head is going to probably destroy the planet. and it's going to leave the Kryptonians with no place to go but Earth, and that's where the War of Supermen will come into play. Because Lane has spent so much time getting everyone thinking that the Kryptonians are invaders that there's going to be no way that the public will see them coming to the planet as anything but an invasion. So I'm hoping I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. I would love to see New Krypton survive, and maybe they move it away from Earth, or they move the city somewhere, or they do something different. But I don't see the planet surviving. I see it getting destroyed.
This Brainiac thing, though, is Luthor involved in it?
Yeah.
And, the question is I guess what I'm saying is this Brainiac attack going to be the destruction of New Krypton? Are they not going to be able to defeat what's coming for them? Because I don't think it's just Brainiac. I mean, I might be wrong there. Maybe it is all Brainiac. I don't know.
No, this is definitely Brainiac, Luthor, and probably even some Lane throw in there as well. This is, a full frontal assault on planet New Krypton. And it's being done in a way that it won't go back to Lane directly. It'll look like a Brainiac invasion of New Krypton. Brainiac trying to, finish the job. So even if this fails, even if New Krypton survives, if they try to blame it on Lane, he can say, hey, that was your old enemy coming back, and your old enemy put Earth in danger. If you guys hadn't stopped him, he would have gone to Earth next. Once again, this Kryptonian threat is causing us problems, and I can see this being a spin job that Lane could very easily do. So, win or lose, Krypton's going to lose at the end of this fight. This is going to be the beginning of the downfall of New Krypton. Whether it's an actual physical loss of planet and whatnot, or whether it's just another massive nail in the coffin of public opinion of Kryptonians.
So you mean it's a lose-lose, not a win or lose?
What did I say?
You said win or lose. Krypton's going to lose at the end of this. No, I know what you mean. If they win this, I'm totally teasing. You actually mean if they win the battle here, they're going to ultimately lose the war.
Yes, this is going to be a no-win, lose-lose situation.
Yeah, and it's fun to me. This book has been so great at its depth of introducing the guilds and just the whole world aspect of New Krypton, and getting to know Clark's society. I'm kind of hoping we get kind of a bottled city out of this at the end of Kandor. That there's a way to kind of recapture something like that, because I always loved that concept. But whether we get that or not, I've really enjoyed this chance to kind of spend 12 issues really getting to know the interpersonal dynamics of how these guilds interact and what their law system is like and what's right and what's flawed. Because any society, any regime, any culture, any leadership of any country has its strengths and has its flaws. And sometimes they can't see them. The outsiders looking in can. Our country's not perfect. No, what country is? And that's kind of the interesting thing to look at a different culture is it makes looking at your own politics a little more eye-opening and interesting. And I think that's what's fun about comics and fantasy fiction in general is a lot of times they open your eyes to real-world issues that we all need to be aware of, in their metaphors that they're using. And it's really kind of this is pretty deep book and a lot of fun for me, and it's just great Superman storytelling. Where again, you get to the root of you don't lose Clark being Superman. You don't lose that you talk about it, the true justice, the American way, the dun-dun-dun, all that stuff. None of that was lost here, yet I felt like he was accessible. And that's just great writing. Jim, I want to talk real quick about Batman 696. Tony Daniels, Sandu Floria, just the whole creative team here. We see Batman, after he'd been wearing the mask and kind of been under control here, being found by Robin, who once again is berating him as he's being pecked at on the beach. But this issue for me was particularly interesting because I've been enjoying this Black Mask mystery of the whole thing, trying to find out who Black Mask is and why. Dude, I am so convinced now that Arkham is Black Mask. That sequence where Arkham, or I'm ready to call him Arkham now. We have Black Mask and over him with the sword, but then he later pulls the gun on him. I went back to the first issue, and that rubber bullet gun that Arkham had, when he was there, I swear that's so totally what he just shot Batman with. And that's what Batman was pulling out of the suit. I know when we talked previously about this book, that was my suspect at the party, Arkham. And I'm so convinced now that Black Mask is Arkham.
Yeah, and we had a talk off air that, we're talking about that bullet, because I didn't catch that was the rubber bullet fired from that gun from earlier. I just, when he said, when he's holding up the bullet saying, I now know who Black Mask is, I was thinking there's some special etching on the bullet that I don't see, and I was thinking, okay, it never clicked on me, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, God, yeah, that's it. It's got to be.
We never saw the bullets from Arkham's gun. So it wasn't the bullets as much as I went and looked online at different gun types and things like that. I looked at the drawing style of the gun, and the gun looks visually just like the gun that Arkham was holding. Mm-hmm. But I even went further. I'm like, okay, let's do a look at rubber bullets. And I looked at various pictures that were brought up. I'm like, well, I think those might be rubber bullets that he's pulling out. Because look at the way that they impacted, and the fact that this impacted on his suit. Okay, yet look at the bullet. I mean, that's not a bullet that looks like it impacted on his suit. You know what I mean? It's there's no dent or anything like that. I mean, it's interesting how it just to me makes me think, well, maybe we're dealing with rubber bullets here. I don't know. This mystery though of who is Black Mask, I love the whole Catwoman thing, in there, and how there was a twist to the whole thing where she's kind of got her own MO going on here at the moment, but then there's that new Katrina, she's basically got this map that they're all trying to get a hold of. And Batman is wearing the mask here and being sent on these missions. And I love how he doesn't know what he's done yet. He's so out of it, he hasn't realized that while under control, he was being manipulated and went and attacked Catwoman and Katrina and all that under these moments. And I loved how in his subconscious, while he was under, this would be something that would prey on him. Imagine being Dick Grayson. You finally got to the point where you've come into your own as Batman. You finally got to the point where you're comfortable in this role, and now you've been manipulated in a way that where you start saying to yourself, would this have happened to Bruce? Am I the Batman that I think I am now? And he is, so totally. I'm not saying this diminished him in any way. I'm saying I love the humanity of this, because we've seen Bruce fall to these places before, where he's had to question himself. And that's what I like about Dick Grayson right now. I'm reading a Batman who's come into his own, that's reminding me of what I like so much about Bruce. I always liked Bruce's vulnerability, because yes, I always thought Batman's a very strong character. Dick Grayson is Batman. Extremely strong Batman. I love him in this character role. But when you also get to see him in vulnerable moments like this, you connect to him and say, man, if he can be vulnerable and pick himself up and do all the things that we know he's going to do next from this, because he gets up and he's like, guess what? I know who he is now. Now, I'm sorry, I've had bad days before. The last thing I'm doing is going and picking out bullets and solving the mystery. You know what I mean? You need a little time to regroup and all that stuff. Dude wakes up and he's already solved the mystery. I'm like, yes, Dick Grayson, so cool. And that's something where you sit there and say to yourself, okay, next time I'm down in the dumps, I'm going to remember Dick Grayson getting up and doing that, and that's going to motivate me. And I like that about comics. It's something about these, they inspire you. And it's more inspiring because we get to see him in this haze of trying to reconstruct in his mind what happened to him. All the things he did with under the influence of the Penguin and the Mad Hatter, who were using him to undermine Black Mask. And I love that there's different factions in Gotham now. Black Mask has created a lot of enemies based on what he has done. And there are these people who went underground, and they're old Batman villains who went underground and banded together for the purpose of saying, hey, let's undermine this guy because that'll open up a gap where we can take over. It is all about getting power.
Yeah, it's the organized crime family, mindset, and just that. And that's one of the things about the Batman rogues have always been just that organized crime element. It's not even just talking about the Maroni family or the different families. It's guys like Penguin. It's guys like Hatter who they have their own little syndicate going. It's not a family-based. It's a freak-based, if you will. But it has that same, type of dealings. And that's something that I've really come to enjoy over the years of the Batman universe. You look at the Superman rogues, you look at the Flash rogues. Each one has their own little different type of sect and feel to it. Batman is going up against the mob, whether it's a classic traditional family or this new age of Gotham family that has little quirks and twists to it. So it's definitely the mob type movies, those mob books, those various genre that I really enjoy seeing. I'm getting that from Batman, and it was hard to. It's at first I didn't really see it with the Black Mask. I didn't see the kind of dealings because he was basically doing a full takeover. I was thinking, okay, we got your traditional megalomaniac type villain, but as the stories played out, I saw the different factions. I saw the different layouts, and I saw, okay, this is, even after Black Mask is quote-unquote defeated, it's not the end of the game. It's just the beginning of the next chapter. And that's something that really just kind of makes the Bat title so entwined in Gotham. Batman can never really leave Gotham. Yeah, there's been stories where he's been outside of Gotham, and those are interesting stories, and they're kind of neat, but he is so much more than just the city guardian. He is a part of that city, and the city is a part of him. So
the city's a character. The city's a major character.
It's funny. I don't even want to say the city's a character because, some people could see that as just, oh, yeah, everybody says that about Batman movies. But this is a meshing. Like, I could see Superman operating out of another city. Yeah, Metropolis is his hometown. He works for the Daily Planet. But I could see Clark going elsewhere. Like, we just talked about him on World of New Krypton, how it felt like Clark on World of New Krypton. Even though he's Kal-El, he's the general, he's not the general, he's the various other things, he still felt like Kal-El. He made it his home, he made it part of who he was.
But you don't think Superman ultimately has to go back to Metropolis?
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, he will. That's his city.
I was going to say, I disagree. See, Metropolis to me is just as valid as Gotham in a very different way. I kind of disagree with you there a little. I don't see Superman operating in California, for example. I could see them doing, when you talk about where it's interesting to see Batman operate in different places and stuff like that, like we've seen him in Justice League, or even in his own book where he's gone to other countries and things where it makes sense. But ultimately, that's what I say, if you don't want to say Gotham's a character, Gotham's an essential component because it's this constant battle in Gotham to try and correct the injustices there, to fight the battle that almost can't be won, and yet it's almost like you're trying to stem the tide. You're holding back a tsunami, so to speak. Because if he were to leave Gotham, what would become of it? And that's really what the true thing is. It's a force of nature almost.
Right. And when I say I don't want to say that it's a character, part of the reason is because that expressions like that, like when you deal with any movies or something, they're saying, oh, the cinematography, it was just a part of and people will go into that and using the backgrounds and the scenery and this and that, saying, oh, it just part of it was a whole other character. It was just where we filmed the movie. It was just so much a part of the movie. I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm saying that about Gotham. It's so much more of Gotham is Batman, and Batman is Gotham that, I don't want anyone to think I'm diminishing his presence in Gotham, his need to be in Gotham. I could, when you say Superman couldn't operate out of California, Superman could operate out of California, and I think it would be a successful title. It would be different story, and it would have a different feel to it, but I think it would still work and would still fit.
And ultimately, we'd all be screaming for him to be back in Metropolis. Metropolis has been so crafted in its own unique way to be this central hub of the DC. And I'm talking about the DC Universe. You got to remember that, in the DC Universe, Metropolis is the happening city. It's the one where the news happens, the information happens. They've got the labs, they've got the cutting edge. The Luthor Corps is there, which is the Microsoft of the DC universe. This is the hub of it is. Actually, California probably is a fair comparison in the sense that it is kind of the central hub of the happenings in the DC universe, the big happening city. Superman, because of the type of character he is, and being the one to have such a world-changing effect and to have such a symbolism in America and in our country of who he is as a character would have to be in that city. You know, that's not the only place he would operate, but that's got to be his central location because that's where you'd get all the news. That's where you get all the news fast because the news is happening there. And he would have to be in that place, and I just can't see that anywhere else in the DC universe.
Well, here's the thing. It's been over a year now, and he hasn't been operating in Metropolis, and it's working. It's working well.
But hang on 1 second. If they told you right now, ongoing, he's going to be living in... It's working. You're forgetting why it's working. For storytelling purposes, his planet has been reborn in outer space. It's not a comparison of saying, well, geez, we're going to keep him in New Krypton forever. It's working because we all know this is finite. It's not infinite. Tell me right now, people wouldn't be blowing a gasket. I would be one of them if we said we're going to keep him on New Krypton forever. I don't want to see that. Now, did I adore and have I been adoring every minute of this storytelling and what they're doing? You darn betcha. But I'm telling you right now, I want to see him back in Metropolis at some point when all this is said and done. We're talking about a finite move versus an infinite move. And Batman's been taken out of, Batman is currently out of his book. Bruce is everywhere else but Gotham right now.
Yeah. Well, we still have Batman. We have Dick Grayson.
Right. But what I'm saying is, though, I mean, you're getting a similar exploration there with him. We've taken, characters like that before. These are two cities, though, that I think are so closely tied to these characters that ultimately they have to wind up back there. I'm not saying that you couldn't tell a story where Superman moves to another place for a little bit, but you gotta make sure that readers know that's going to be a finite story, or else... Because there's too much of Metropolis that's essential to me in Superman storytelling. It is. This worked. I agree. I agree with you. These 12 issues totally worked of World of New Krypton. But it was because we knew it was finite. We knew that he wasn't going to stay there. He told us he wasn't going to stay there.
And it's funny, this discussion's just got me thinking about other characters and their cities. And I was about to throw out some thinking, and then as I'm going through, I'm thinking how when Bart was the Flash, he shifted, to California, and people didn't like that. They want, their Flash to be Central City. They want, the Green Arrow to be in, Star City. They want, Hal on the West Coast and Coast City. They want, and I'm thinking, we have these characters, built and locked into a city, and we want them to stay there, and this is their domain. So, I'm basically I'm gonna probably throw out what I've been saying about, shifting, but it's still...
Can I say something about what you just said, though? Because it was interesting you mentioned Bart. Here's the difference. When Bart moved to California, I think it happened too late for that book. Because I thought that was interesting because it was showing what made him as the Flash unique. And they were heading in a different direction with him that I thought was interesting in that book. I just think it kind of came too late. I think by then the damage had been done. And I'm not saying the damage, you and I both liked Bart, but I mean, I just think you're right in the sense that people were looking for more traditional Flash. I think, though, that's something that California move and all that I thought was interesting exploration for Bart because it was Bart. Now, if they'd moved Wally there, I got a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing is, we're talking about Clark in Metropolis, whereas Superboy, Nightwing. They moved Nightwing to New York. I loved it. He's worked in Gotham, he's worked in Bloodhaven, he's worked in New York. All of those things worked for Nightwing. Yet Bruce, I don't want to see Bruce operating out of New York unless I know it's finite. Dick is an interesting puzzle for me. Because I know there's a lot of people listening who are like, I want Dick to stay. And amen to you. Because I'm torn as a diehard Bruce fan to the point where I'm like, this is so interesting to me right now with Dick Grayson that I'm like, but ultimately if Dick Grayson's staying Batman, I'm going to go back to what you said and say Gotham's home.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
It's Batman's home.
It's funny as you're talking. I realized I kind of caught myself while we were having a discussion before, because I'm one of those people who says Dick Grayson should remain as Batman. But when we were having our discussion and I was talking about the importance of Batman, I a couple times almost said Bruce needs to stay in Gotham. Bruce is a part, and instead of saying Batman needs to be a part of Gotham. So even I, who wants to see Dick Grayson, who loves him, who wants to see a change, was still throwing out Bruce's name when I meant to say Batman. So that's kind of a weird thing that I just realized I did.
I'm going to admit something right now, though, and I know it. I'm sitting here saying right now that I'm torn. The second they bring Bruce back, because I know they're going to do it right, I'm going to completely change my tune. Because I know it. Because I know they're just going to make me go, wow. And that's not taking it. I love Dick Grayson as Batman. This is very cool. But that's why I'm so torn, because I know, I'm like, you're going to sell me on this in such a way where... Now, I'm going to be very interested to see what they do with Dick Grayson, because something has to be done. Yeah. And that is an adamant thing. I am very torn, though, because I am still into this whole thing of... I love him here, because I love that he worked his own way out of this situation with Hugo Strange and, Black Mask and his female, cohort and all that. And I loved this whole... that he started to get coherent and started using his own tricks to kind of come up. It's typical Batman. You pull something out of the utility belt because you've realized what's happening to you along the way, and he was able to overcome it and survive. And then to learn and get something from it to the point where he's now uncovered who Black Mask is. I loved this sense of desperation, this sense of in what seems to be a stalemate between the two of them. Where he shot him with the bullets and, nobody really won that fight. Batman did there, though, because he got something that Black Mask does not want him to know. He knows his identity. And whether I'm wrong or right on him being Arkham is irrelevant to me at the moment. I loved in that moment that he knows for sure. Because even I am at this point where I've been reading and I'm like, I'm pretty darn convinced that I think it's Arkham from all that. I'm pretty solid on that. But there is that part of me that's wavering where I'm like, maybe they're swerving me here, and there's something I'm missing clue-wise. So I can see that part of it where I'm not, but he's sold. He knows. I love that. I feel right now that Dick Grayson is more sold than I am. He is more confident than I am. He knows who Black Mask is, and we are going to see him next. Next issue cannot come soon enough, and that to me is what great Batman storytelling is. When, for me, I am chomping at the bit. When I turn to the end of the page, I've read this book now, and I kid you not, I've read this issue 5 times. And because I've just been going through it with a fine-tooth comb, trying to look over the clues, trying to jump into this whole thing. It's been a very cool arc.
Yeah, it's been a fun read, and I'm gonna throw 100% say that I think you're right, that it is Arkham. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm as confident in my decision as Dick is.
Jim, there's one other book I want to talk about real quick before we take a little break. The Great 10, number 4. This was the Immortal Man in Darkness issue. And, we've talked about this miniseries on the show before. And one of the things I've liked about it has been we've got the overarching story with the gods and stuff, but those individual focused issues talk about... I can understand the attraction. There are these planes, the new technology that basically makes you a superhero. To a certain extent, you have this kind of symbiotic relationship, I guess, with it. And in order to become a pilot of it, every time you take it out for a flight, you lose a year of your life. But yet imagine being that pilot who's saying, I get to be a part of this legacy. I get to be the Immortal Man in Darkness. And the idea that there's more than one of them and there's this rich history of them, you can understand the attraction. It's an addiction. This sense of, wow, I get to be a part of this even for the short period of time. But every time you take a flight, you lose a year of your life. How many flights would you take? Would you keep going? I mean, look at how many missions we've seen him go on. In his tenure, because I'm assuming this is the same one we've seen all along right now.
Yeah, it's got to be.
So, we get a little peek into his origin and this idea of the Dragon Wing and how cool that is. I'd have, I was fans of shows like Knight Rider and stuff like that. I get into, these vehicles that, can do all these things. And I got to admit, there would be an attraction where I would have to say, would I do that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
With me, I do know. No way. I love the story. I love the concept of the character. I think it's just a really neat thing, and I can understand how people would be tempted to do it, but there's no way I would. Maybe I don't know if it's cowardness on my part or greed for desire for life or whatever you want to call it, but there's no way I could do that, knowing that every single time I go up, I'm using a year of my life, and just. They don't have a retirement plan, really, if you're the immortal man in darkness. You quit the job when you die of old age, at like the ripe old age of 25 or something. It's kind of a ridiculous. I don't even want to say ridiculous, because it is an outstanding concept, and I really did enjoy this issue. See what made his mind tick. This whole Grade 10 series has been, for me, we talked about on New Krypton how it was like that cultural exploration of what it is to be Kryptonian. This is going into the exact other side of it. This is going into that that culture of the Chinese culture, where it is about the greater good. It is about the overall country and not your own personal needs, but the needs of your country. And I like seeing this other style of superhero coming out. They're not the vigilantes flying free and wild. They're the government-run entity. They're sponsored by the government. They're basically, in a way, controlled by the government. And seeing this, this mindset come out, and then especially this superhero, particularly just the way he is and who he is and why he does it was really, really fascinating. But there's no way I would do that.
I'll tell you, I'll actually agree with you on this, because I'm looking back to 1 year ago. First of all, I take it back. I don't think this is the same one that we saw. I think this is one that's exclusive to this miniseries, because they go back to the airbase 1 year ago, which I'm taking our first appearance of them would have been predating that.
Yeah.
So the one that comes out of there is actually the one we saw previously, and then we see him come out of that amniotic fluid and basically melt.
Yeah.
I don't. You know what? I think I draw the line at if I know I'm going to put this on and I'll melt. Because he saw the guy melt in front of him, then he put that on and said, I still want to do it. I'm going to be honest with you. That would be my limit.
Yeah.
If I see my predecessor kind of just splatter in front of me as I was holding him, I think that would be enough to make me say,
check, please.
I'm going to fly Continental. But I guess I could see for a test pilot like this, the attraction and how you look at this whole thing and say, this is my chance to be a part of a... See, what we're not seeing is this is a legacy in his country. This is something to be a part of. You're a part of a legend. And there would be an attraction to being part of a legend. I find it interesting. No, you're right, though. I'm going to completely co-sign with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking back through the issue and seeing the part where, it's... he has to wipe off his hero.
Yeah.
I'm a Batman fan. I'm a Superman fan. If I got to hold if Batman was like shot or something like that, and I got to have his last moments with him, I think I would draw the lines with the fact that he just kind of splattered all over me afterwards. That would be kind of enough. So yeah, I'm with you. I find it interesting though that each one of these guys has this is all about a legacy and a tradition and about sacrifice to be a part of that tradition. Yet there is a payoff to the sacrifice in the sense that he gets. It's almost like a drug.
Yeah. Flying
the plane in the sense that you get this this rush.
It's the ultimate feeling. And
yeah.
You think about with pilots, especially when Hal, those anytime they do the origins and that first time when he first puts on the ring, when he's first flying just himself, they always draw him with that whoa kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And it's got to be like that feeling every single time. That's the thing with compared it to a drug. It's junkies are always chasing after that first high. I can imagine this every single time is like that first high over and over and over again. It's that same kind of rush of adrenaline, energy, just the general, feeling of that you're not flying inside a plane, you are the plane and you feel what the plane feels, and just that's got to be an exciting feeling. I still wouldn't want to do it, but it is an exciting feeling.
Yeah, let me ask you this question: would you give up your life to do it once?
I don't know. And even if I could only do it where I would, run it, say, 20 missions, then you retire. So I would be
take 20 years off your life.
Take 20 years off my life. I think I would probably do that, maybe, where I would then be an
Although, how many times do you fly during the 20 missions?
Yeah.
Because a mission doesn't necessarily mean one flight.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know.
He may be flying only 20 missions, this guy.
Yeah, because, 20 missions could mean you're put in a bucket.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. I'm more down with I would consider maybe one mission. Because there is that part of me that's like, oh man, does the dragon wing look cool? So I could see myself saying, wow, if I could be a part of that, on some level.
I'm an addict, so there's no way I know me.
You'd be afraid that it wouldn't be just once, right?
Yeah, I get that taste, and I'd be like, okay, well, looks like I'm going to die being the immortal man in darkness.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
We could make it a popsicles or something afterwards. Then we could just, put you in a fridge and in a freezer tray and put toothpicks in you.
First, you're going to be a blend. Well, you'll be a blend of coffee.
I will be, yes, the Norge blend.
And I'll be
yes.
and I'll be popsicle sticks.
That'll be great. Oh yes, our own distorted view of the DC universe.
Oh no, you don't!
Hey, Sean and Jim, I hope you guys are doing well. It's me, Ziggle from the forums. It's been a while since I left a voicemail anyway, so I thought I'd leave one right now. I just read Green Lantern issue number 51, and I wanted it, as always, usually when I call, I like to call to share an interesting theory, so I thought I'd call and share a theory on that. If you guys notice, so hopefully by this time you guys have already reviewed it, so spoiler alert, anyone listening, Green Lantern 51, just in case. But Parallax gets disappeared, he gets presto. And then the Spectre teases to the Red Lantern Atrocitus about the possible Red Lantern Herald avatar thing. I don't know what they're called, Parallax, Ion, Black Hand, things like that, Predator. Anyway, we see that Parallax disappears, and Spectre teases the Red Lantern, if you go try and find the force behind the Red Lantern one, he'll pretty much destroy you or whatever. Well, anyway, we also notice that Hector Hammond goes, oh man, they took Parallax. Now, my theory on that might be that maybe this might be the event near the end of Brightest Day or after Brightest Day in terms of Green Lantern. Maybe that event will have to do with all the avatars coming together and just something dealing with them. We still haven't seen the Blue Lantern's avatar yet. We haven't seen the Orange Lantern. Oh, if there is one, Orange Lantern, I'd say blue-orange, yeah. Because we've seen Green Lantern, we've seen the Yellow Lanterns, One Parallax, we've seen Predator. We haven't seen, excuse me, we haven't seen the Compassion one yet. Things like that. So that would be really interesting if, it involves them somehow. If you guys remember, after Sinestro Corps War, the next event after that was actually the 7 Corps War, and then it was Blackest Night. So maybe Blackest Night, Brightest Day, and then that event, maybe. Just a theory, anyway. I don't know. It would be really interesting to see what happens with that. What else? Oh, yeah, and before I go, I do want to give a quick shout-out on 2 other DC books I've been enjoying. As always, Tiny Titans. Just awesome and a great laugh, as always. I don't know, I couldn't stop laughing at the fact that Tiny Titan Match was trying to eat Crypto. This is really cute. And another one, out of all the Batman books that I'm reading, because I'm trying to read as most as I can, Batman and Robin, Red Robin and all that. But the one I'm enjoying the most is actually Red Robin. Maybe it's because it has a more direct impact with what may be going on with Bruce Wayne and leading up to the return of Bruce Wayne. But honestly, I've just been loving Tim. He's been kicking ass, and he's just been, doing his thing. It's awesome. It's awesome how, I think in the last issue I read where he's training and he's here like, okay, do what Nightwing taught you, now do what Connor taught you, now do what Batman taught you. Don't be one of them, be all of your teachers. And he's mixing and matching, and he's trying to create his own identity, and I'm just loving that. The Council of Spiders story, I think that's what it was called, was just really awesome. I don't know, I just really loved it. And, yeah, it's just really cool. I'm just really enjoying that one the most out of all of them. Not to knock them all off. I mean, all the Bat books are just amazing, in my opinion, but this one is just grabbing me like, holy crap, this is really cool. That's it. I hope you guys are doing really awesome. I can't wait for the 200th episode, and I certainly can't wait to see you guys at Super Show, so hopefully you guys are doing awesome. Take care. Bye.
He's mixing and a matching, he's bobbing and he's weaving. I gotta agree with that. Red Robin's awesome. I totally echo his comments on Red Robin. That is a great book. Talking about Green Lantern number 51, the whole Parallax thing, Hal becoming Parallax again,
yes,
so totally worked and made sense for me. And this idea that, in the future, there's no way we're not going to see for the other colors who their, as he called them, avatars, their, entity, that entity is. We've got to see that.
Yeah. Oh, so, definitely.
I mean, that rage thing, there's no way that was a red herring. Pardon the pun, I really didn't mean it that way. Yeah, but I really do think didn't mean it that way. But it is, I do think it is interesting, though. I love what he was talking about the Orange Lantern. I was thinking to myself, maybe it's Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. Because green is good. But I do think we're going to eventually see them. I think the funny one is going to be, if we do see the orange one, that's going to be the one where it's funny to see who it ends up being. But I don't know if we're going to see them all come to a head. But I certainly think we're going to see inevitable confrontations that are going to be there. I wonder if we're going to see a big Green Lantern event after all that, or if maybe we're going to see arcs happening in the individual books, maybe some crossover between those. But I have a funny feeling, especially with the fact that they're starting up another title and all that maybe we're going to see some more contained explorations of various elements of the Green Lantern universe before we jump to the next event. Because we did see that kind of before we got into all this. We got to see some story arcs and things. I'd like to see that before we jump right into the next event. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, though, that we're eventually going to see an event where it is the war of... the Color War is... Do you think the Color War is over? Or do you think it's going to come to a head again?
I think the Color War is pretty much just really beginning now. And once they're through Blackest Night, if the colors survive, which I'm thinking they will, I'm hoping they will, because I'm really liking the multicolored cores, that I think we'll see another, flare up, and there will be something will happen. This, the Blackest Night, I don't think is the end of the Color War.
I think we'll see an alliance, though, of like a tentative one, like we talked about. I think the United Nations concept of them kind of sort of having this tentative alliance out of need, out of what has happened here, where you're going to have infractions, you're going to have incidents, you're going to have political confrontations and all that. I don't see that there isn't possibilities that we're going to have something like that in this whole scenario. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of all this. I think there's a lot of different... you could be complete... that could be what it is. It's another Color War, and we go right to that. I don't know that we might not see something a little different, though, where they try to tentatively... Like the New Guardians, for example. Yeah. What if they really are the New Guardians, and they continue on as the Guardians after this? That
each color has a Guardian...
But they're part of the group. Yeah. They are like a group, the New Guardians, where they're kind of like that United Nations concept, where each one of them is representative of their color core in the Guardians. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if the New Guardians thing isn't something more long term than what we're seeing in this. And I might be wrong. It's fun to speculate on this. Yeah. I don't care if it goes in a completely different direction. I love that. I don't think there's one possibility on what could happen out of this. I love that when I was listening to him, I'm like, oh, he's got some interesting ideas. Maybe they will go in that direction. I love what I was thinking about them, like, oh, well, they could go in this direction. Or maybe, like you said, they'll go into a full-blown Color War. I don't know. And I like that. I like that there's a lot of possibilities on the table. I'm just thinking with 3 books right now coming down the pipeline after this, that there's some... and knowing that one of them at least is having a backup co-feature, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. that I think there's going to be some interesting options to do some explorations of relationships and trying to coexist between the color core, where it'll work, where it won't. And I think we see clearly ones in here that will have easy alliances. We'll have ones that'll have tentative alliances. We'll have ones that just plain out won't get along.
Yeah.
And the other ones will have to act as intermediaries between all that. I don't know. I think this is going to be a very interesting universe after this, that all bets are off. I don't think it's going to be all out. I don't think it's going to be all out war, though. Yeah, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's funny because as you're saying, we don't really know where it's going. I agree with you. We don't. Part of me was just thinking that this can't. But maybe this is the color war that was leading up to Blackest Night. But I can't imagine that it wasn't more of a full. There would be more of a full scale confrontation. You know, because really there was these fights between the colors, but there wasn't any. You know, full on multi-tiered, like the Sinestro Corps war. That was a war between yellow and green. I'm thinking there's going to be that type of war going on, multiple issues, multiple titles that involves a war of all the colors. But it could be just a kind of like a symbolic or a metaphorical war of the color war. You know, in Blackest Night right now. So it's the rage of all the colors against the darkness. It's the light against the brightest day event, which is all the colors together raging against the black of the Black Lanterns, where there is the absence of absence of light. That could be what they mean by a color war. It could be a green and violet tag team against yellow and red, or red fighting a war against everybody and blue trying to keep the peace. I don't know. There's so much that the Green Lantern, title, the Green Lantern universe can do at this point in time that I'm really enjoying this. And I'm just sitting back, and holding on. And it just this mystery of what happened to Parallax. Who took Parallax? Who has Parallax does have me thinking, is this going to be a trigger for a color war, or is this going to be a story arc within Green Lantern, and Hal finds out what happened to Parallax at this event, and he's got to deal with that situation.
Well, we're going to see that with Hector Hammond, because we know where Parallax is. Parallax is in Hector Hammond. Remember when it dissipated? Location and reason undetermined? But no, it has Parallax. It's right over Hector Hammond. Hector Hammond's got Parallax. Hector Hammond is the host for Parallax right now.
See, I took it that Hector Hammond doesn't have it, but he knows who has it.
No.
That's
it
how
has
I read
Parallax. So what's it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What is the it that has Parallax?
So what is the unknown force? You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
No, I completely co-sign with you on this one. Oh, no. It has Parallax. So what's it?
Yeah. And I don't think it's Necron or any of those baddies. So what is the it?
I don't know.
Here's the one thing.
No, because if it was Necron, I think we would have seen that here at the end.
Oh, yeah.
With the confrontation between Spectre and Necron, I think we would have seen that play out there.
Right.
And we didn't. But I love that Spectre couldn't strike him down. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, one other thing I'm thinking is, what if the Yellow Guardian has Parallax?
Who's the Yellow Guardian?
I know, there isn't a Yellow Guardian. What if a Yellow Guardian appears?
But we've got new See, I don't think that we're going to have those kind of Guardian roles. I don't know. I guess it's funny how I think because and that's one of the nice possibilities of this storyline is there's so many directions they can go in that we're doing our own speculation. I'm seeing things one way, you're seeing it another, and I don't know who's right or who's wrong. I'm not seeing it that there's going to be outside Guardians. I'm seeing that some of these lanterns are going to become Guardians. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe there are going to be traditional Guardians coming out of this, and maybe they're going to be. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this. I see the Guardian concept as we previously knew it being outdated, and us actually getting someone from each corps being one of the Guardians, and we're going to see a multicolor loose alliance. That's what I'm seeing coming out of this, but I could be wrong. It's fun to talk about this and think about. And you're right. What if we see some other? Well, but there is something. It has Parallax. So what is
Something has Parallax. That's what I was wondering if maybe this is where we're going to see who the new Guardian is. One of the new Guardians will be a
no, that won't be.
I don't know.
No, I do think that those entities are going to be just what they are, the entities. So if they possess that, you become that entity, like what we've seen with Hal and Parallax.
Right.
So this has become the new host for the entity. That wouldn't be the Guardian. That would be the host of the entity. Very similar to what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Blackest Night number 7. I'm trying to dance around it, and doggone it. We saw Sinestro take the entity of the White Light within him and become the host for that at the end of Blackest Night number 7. And, to become the greatest Lantern of them all. Not the greatest Green Lantern, the greatest Lantern of them all. And, his need to prove that. It's going to be interesting to see, how that all plays out. But I don't see then like him being the Guardian. I see him as being the host of that entity.
I'm not saying that the Yellow Guardian is the Guardian for Yellow because he's taken over, or he's become fused with Parallax. I'm saying that there is an entity, there's a being out there that is a Yellow Guardian, and that Yellow Guardian now is in possession of Parallax, which will further cause a war down the line.
See, I think it is something that one of us should know what it is. I don't think it is going to be some necessarily new character. I'm wondering if it isn't something I'm going to be coming back and going, geez, I'm a dunce. I should have known what it was. I don't think that it's going to be something new as much as something where I'm going to be like, stupid, why didn't you realize what it is? I don't know. I'm kind of taking that, like, they're throwing out something here that we're going to go, oh my gosh, that's teamed up with Parallax. I don't know. So it'll be fun to see. Or maybe you're right. Maybe it is a new thing being introduced. I don't know. There were some great moments in this issue, though. I loved we had the moment with Lex Luthor and Larfleeze, where Lex Luthor's explaining, you do not know avarice. I don't know it. We all know it on my world, Orange Lantern. On my world, life is about owning things. Then perhaps this planet is worth saving after all. And that moment, it's broken up by Black Lantern Spectre taking a stop during the fight with Parallax. But it's interesting, just in that moment, is Larfleeze, you got to imagine, post this, Larfleeze is going to pop up on Earth. He's got to, right?
Yeah, this is a great, Earth is his kind of town, man. This is a good place for him to hang out and him for, because this is greed.
He's got to go to Vegas.
Yeah, come on. You got to hit Vegas, do a show, catch a show here, I mean, I can see...
You see him seeing like Cirque du Soleil or something like that, and then go into the casino. Man. I'm going to go see a little O, and then I'm going to, take all the merchandise and then go gamble.
Yeah, this is going to surprise you, but, the Osmonds, Donnie and Marie do a great show. I think he would enjoy it.
You think Larfleeze would be there?
I think, I think it would be one of those things where he wouldn't want to admit he enjoyed it, and he would have to twist his arm a little bit, saying, "Come on, dude, you're gonna like this." A lot of singing, a lot of dancing, high action, a little bit of wholesome, funny comedy.
Did you just say high action?
Yeah.
What Osmond show are you going to?
Dude, now when I talk high action, I'm not talking like car chases and explosions, but there is.
What do you determine as high? I'm not saying that it's okay. So you're saying high energy.
Right, yeah, high energy. Like, Celine Dion's a very talented singer, but she's not an action show. She goes out there, she belts out the notes, and you're like, wow, that's a set of pipes. But you don't walk away going, wow, that was...
See, to me, Cirque du Soleil, that kind of stuff, that's a high-action show.
Yes.
You're putting the Osmonds as a high-action show?
Yes, I am.
I haven't seen them, so I saw them as a kid, because they had the Donnie and Marie show in the 70s. So I saw them when they came to Cleveland as a kid. But you're telling me that, like, Larfleeze is going to go and see the Donnie Marie show and say to himself it's high action? That, to me, would be the Cirque show where they got the bikes going and doing all this.
He'll definitely enjoy that. He'll definitely enjoy O. But, and the
But you're thinking he's also a Donnie Marie guy.
I think he's a closet Donnie Marie fan. I think
really?
He probably wouldn't admit it to anybody just because there is that stigma of being an Osmond fan that he's probably trying to avoid. Got to maintain his street cred, but I think he would enjoy it.
And you know what? He won't give up the street cred because it's his.
Well,
So I agree with you on that fits his personality in the sense that once he's got his street cred, he will not sacrifice it for anything.
He looks a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll.
Now, can you tell me what you mean by that show being high action? I still don't get it.
Energy. It's a very energetic show.
Okay, high energy I'll buy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, action, energy, I'm kind of, doing.
Because high action to me is like what Cirque du Soleil's do. They got people on bikes jumping in and out of water, and is an insane show. But
there's constantly something going on stage. It was like
and Larfleeze would want to see all the shows. He would want them all to be. I don't know that any of the participants would be alive afterwards because he would want them.
Yeah,
they would be. He'd probably kill them so they become a part of his lantern. So he'd be. You're right. He literally would be a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, because Donnie and Marie would be constructs. But yeah, it is funny. I would love to see Larfleeze hit Vegas because it'd be interesting to see what he wants to walk out with. How do we get on this?
I don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, these moments with Parallax and the Spectre where he goes inside. Now, why do you think Parallax freed the Spectre?
Because Parallax probably recognized that what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So
he wanted to not only destroy the Black Lantern Spectre, but he also saw an opportunity to take down the actual Spectre and take out two power sources at that time. So he wasn't so much that he was trying to do a good thing as far as trying to take out any competition.
Right. Now's the ideal time when you're in the middle of this war type situation. It is exposed and everything is boom set there
and puts him in a position of power.
Right.
Talk about gorgeous artwork. Doug Mahnke just nailed it out of the park in this particular book and it's just the colors are great, everything. I mean, there's those spreads there where he's really like ripping apart the Black Lantern from the Spectre. Yeah. And you see some. I mean, he ripped the Spectre's face off at one point in time, and the Spectre's still sitting here saying, "I see you." I'm pretty much so done. You start doing face off on me, and it's wow. But with that separation there, I love that. Again, we see the different priority levels because Atrocitus throughout this, he's pulling energy off of Mira, and we get to see that the more rage that's going on around him, the more he draws from all that. And especially because she comes off of his ring, that's something that he would feed off of as well. Well, he now is trying to enlist the Spectre as a member of the Corps, and it does show that the Spectre as an entity is an entity of his own. I liked that he immediately worked his way out of it. I'm not the entity of rage you seek. I'm God's rage, not yours. And immediately he's reverting back to green right before our eyes. Him being his typical colors, not green in the sense like he's a will.
Right.
But I know of the Crimson Creature of Anger Atrocitus, and I like that when you're talking about that, and when Leroy was talking about him, that entity is something I want to see. What is this entity that would destroy him? What is this great? And have we already seen this entity? Or is this something new? And I'm thinking that might be something new.
That's definitely something new.
Mm-hmm. And that might lead to Atrocitus finds this creature, and I wonder if the various colors are going to have to band together against this creature. Or if Atrocitus and members of his Corps are going to have to band together against this creature. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because that's got to be a story that's going to be told. It'll be interesting to see what level it's told on.
Yeah, there's just so much that, it's funny, as this is going on, and it's just building and laying the groundwork for, the future stories. And I'm just like, dang it, this is awesome.
Hal and Carol, where I love the Spectre helping to release Hal Jordan, but that fear will connect me to you while Hal Jordan is anchored to her. So he's like, the Spectre wants Parallax, and he's willing to take free Hal, to get Parallax. He doesn't necessarily need Hal. I do think that he would take down Hal, being the host, take down the whole entity if he had to. But I did like this concept that the Spectre was willing to do something to help release him, which was kind of cool. And that moment with Carol and grabbing on with Love and freeing Hal, and we get to see her. There's something between those two, and we're going to see further storytelling with that relationship. We have to, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is funny because I feel bad for Cowgirl.
I do too.
Because I liked her character with Hal, and I thought that was kind of a neat thing. Very similar, very, very like-minded people together, and they work together. But just there is something deeper in this connection between these two that, I want to see these two together. And curious to see, now that she's a Star Sapphire, when everything is said and done, how will that affect their relationship? Will it prevent or will it enhance? Could this be an alliance tool between these two cores?
It's funny, we were speaking of the Color Wars, and he brought up Tiny Titans when he was talking about Tiny Titans issue number 25, which was guest written by Jeff Johns. It's out Baltazar and Franco, and it's Superboy Returns issue. And this book I'm actually glad that he did kind of a segue into this, because I don't talk about this book enough. And this is one of those books. You talked earlier about how there's like the Shield and books like that you can't get rid of. Tiny Titans, I could not drop this book in a million years. It's so fun every issue. And this has this, not only did it bring in, like you said, Match and Superboy into this whole thing, which was done so well, but they brought in the rings.
Yeah.
Where each of the Tiny Titans got their own ring, and they end up going on this little adventure with it. But then Hal Jordan shows up and says that they're not ready to have those rings yet. But I did love the moments where they got mood rings for Robin and Superboy and Robin both got mood rings? Is that who the ones were? And Superboy's mood immediately changed because of Cassie and Supergirl. But then Robin's ring only changed when it was Batgirl and what was it? Starfire?
Starfire, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cool just to see those little references. It's just kind of funny little gags and stuff like that. I loved the bit with Match where he follows him everywhere, so I guess Match is now going to become a regular part of the book as well. Except when he's around puppies, and then he eats the furniture, because he eats everything. He just becomes really, really funny. I love the bit, though, where all of a sudden he's eating the furniture and Krypto shows up on the scene. Uh-oh. I think you said the magic word. Puppy? That's the one. And Krypto's leash gets caught on Connor's arm, and he gets pulled out with Match chasing after him. And I love they're sitting back there. They're still eating. Well, it was sure good to see Connor again. Yep, remind me to get a new chair. And then, this little tip with furniture. The gags in this book, and there's no way to do them justice, trying to do them in audio. You've got to see the artwork and the visual gags. If you aren't reading this book, it's at a $250 cover price point, and that's retail. Do yourself a favor and give this book a shot. Every issue's contained. It's a lot of fun to read. I laugh all the way through. It's really accessible and fun. My students at school love it, but I'm going to be honest with you, I picked this up for me. I have all the singles of the 25 issues, and I pick up the trades for my students. But it is accessible in the sense that I always wondered what it'd be like for my kids who they don't have the DC background I do. I get a lot of the Teen Titans gags because I know the Teen Titans. There's not a Teen Titans cartoon out right now, yet this book is so accessibly written. My kids love it. I mean, Tiny Titans, the trades that have been released so far, are so passed around my classroom. The kids are asking from them from each other's desks. They're sharing them. They're passing it around. These things get beat up like crazy. I love it. I mean, there's nothing greater than seeing my kids pulling these things out and getting engaged in comics, because that gets me geeked out to just see them doing it. But they're enjoying reading. It's because these books are just so well put together and just so well written. And I think it's, we talked about fun on the last episode, where I was sitting there saying, why has fun become something that diminishes? I think this is a great example of where to do good comedy in comics, where you're doing a whole book devoted to, sight gags and humor and things like that, I think it's really hard to do. To do something that's genuinely really funny every single issue, yet the characters are endearing and fun that you care about them. This is something that I think it's great to see that there are creators who can do this and just make you laugh and have a good time with it. There's something smart and intelligent about that, being able to pull that off. And I love this book. I mean, this is a well-written issue that just goes so well with the other 24 issues before. This is a book I would never drop in a million years, just because I think it's just so fantastic. Tiny Titans, yay. So I'm glad.
Titans, man.
Yeah. It's just such a great book. So you're missing something if you're not reading this one.
Hey, Sean and Jim. It's Deadpool from the forums, or Ryan Eddie Edmonds, as I tend to go by in normal life. Just chiming in for the Raging Oscars list. Now, I do apologise. I really do hate doing these voicing calls. I'm one of those people who tends to speak with my hands and tend to feed off better with interaction. So this is actually a personal torture for me, but I did want to chime in. So I do apologise as I get through this thing. Now, for my best of 2009, I figure most of the Green Lantern, the Superman, the Batman, the Flash, Wonder Woman stuff will be covered by other people. But I did want to chime in with a few things that I just wanted to get out there. And, figured, if I don't say them, no one else will. And, if it does get said twice, then they probably need the publicity, which is good. First one is Jonah Hex, the Six Gun War, the 6-part miniseries. Basically, to me, this was a Western event. Fantastic comic by Jimmy and Justin. Really, really great stuff. Really big checkout. If you love the Darwin Cook issue, which I know a lot of people brought, jump back in the bins, pick this up. Another one I did want to throw in, I know I mentioned Superman will probably get mentioned, but World of New Kryton is a fantastic series. Best compliment I can actually give this series is I dropped it after issue 1. 6 issues later, I really did miss it and was hearing all the buzz about it and spent a whole day just going from comic book store to comic book store, tracking down all of these past issues that I'd missed out on. And it really was worth it. Pete Woods, with his 3D mapping art, is fantastic and revolutionary for comics, and I don't think it's given enough credit. Another one I want to give credit to over on the Wildstorm side of things is the Gears of War ongoing series I got at the moment. I actually picked this book up out of dollar bins and read through it now. I've still only read the first arc so far, but it was absolutely fantastic. Just a story about soldiers, going through platoons, war. Really great look at just war in general. Best compliment I can give this series, though, is I actually haven't played the video game. So a book based on a video game which I haven't played still holds up. I do give that one a thumbs up there. My best book for 2009, though, and this is one that may have got mentioned elsewhere, but I don't care. Hands down, my favourite book of 2009 is Adventure Comics, the Superboy series mainly with that. Last year, I actually wrote a play in which I had a character talk about Superboy, and the way I had him put it is that Superboy is that classic moment. He has the potential with the Superman side, the potential to be the greatest good there ever is, and with the Lex Luthor side, the potential to be the worst there ever is. And that basically sums up every kid in the world to me. Every kid gets to that point, and every parent has that fear of their kid once they reach a point and they're going from being a child to being an adult, and where they're going to go and what their potential actually is at that point, and can take them anywhere. And Jeff Johns nailed that perfectly. Like, I know the latest Doctor Who series has dealt a fair bit with that, just human potential, and I think that's really what came out in Jeff Johns' writing here of that issue. And Francis Manifold Art, never noticed him anywhere before, but he came out of nowhere and just definitely a standout there. Now, my best collected edition, I did want to do one of these, is the Starman Omnibus. Now, the Starman Omnibus, I hadn't read Starman. Actually, I had. That is a lie. I'm sorry, I did lie. I'd read the first 2 trades of Starman before, borrowed, but the omnibuses just package it so beautifully. They're wonderful. I think only one came out this year, but they're still my pick for it. The $60, $70 price tag on the front is still worth it just for the essays that James Robinson puts in there about working on the series and just working in DC already, let alone the 17-plus comic books you get in there. Really, really fantastic. I should say, too, if you didn't get by the accent, I'm in Australia, so that's 60, 70 Australian dollars. I don't know what they are in US dollars, but judging by everything else, I'm betting it's quite cheaper than that. Now, that's the best of 09. Now, one thing I did want to throw in there is just a little bit of Something I'd like to see DC change a bit, and my biggest disappointment for '09, and it's the same every single year, is just they don't get their trades out quick enough. Prime example of that is I recently picked up the Blackest Night Suicide Squad, then jumped on with Secret 617. Loved it. I'm hook, line, and sinker into this series. Blame myself every day for not listening to you guys sooner. Went out, picked up the first trade, but that's it. That's issues 1 to 6, and then I've got a massive gap from 7 to 16. No trades on the stand to fill that gap till April, which if you're doing a push for this book right now, you've got a link tie-in. I got the money in my hands, DC. I want to buy your books. You just need to have them out there. But, in all's concerned, really a small complaint. So it's nothing really much to worry about there. And lastly, for the wrap-up of 2009, on the non-DC side of things, biggest one I have to give it up to is G.I. Joe Cobra. Fantastic series. It's been plugged everywhere as one of the best books of '09. Definitely is. I highly recommend anyone to get out there and pick it up, check it out. Biggest disservice I think this book actually has is it's titled as a G.I. Joe book. Now, it uses the G.I. Joe universe well and is fantastic on that side, but for how good this book is, I don't think enough people will pick it up because it is titled G.I. Joe. Definitely a great series there. So look, that's pretty much it for my 2009 side of things. I do apologize once again for all the people who do have to listen to this, worse than Jim singing. But I do thank you for sticking through, and I apologize for the one I'm about to do over there on the 200th episode. All right. Signing off from Australia is Deadpool or Ryan Edmonds.
Okay. Now, he's calling that a bad audio comment. I thought that was a fantastic audio comment.
Yeah, and
please, more of those. I like that. And it's not knocking any other audio comment we've ever gotten, but it's funny. I feel like I sound like a moron every episode, and then I get an audio comment like that just kind of verifies it. That was really a cool audio comment. A couple things. He shouted out comics outside of DC, and I don't get to do it on the show. Give me kind of a little segue here. Two of my favorite comics. I read a lot outside of DC, but two of my favorite comics in the last year. Terry Moore's Echo. It had been one that I started reading, and then I got into so much show stuff that I kept getting it because I love the work of Terry Moore. And what I did this year is after I kind of had gotten a chance to finally get back in the book, I had read like the first year's worth of it, and now I'm all caught up on the book. The concept behind this, the premises about it, there's this girl who goes on this test flight with this suit, and during the test flight, they test her using missiles on the suit to test like durability and stuff like that. It's a flight suit and all that. Well, basically it's like a nuclear level explosion, which means her, the suit, and everything explodes. Well, the suit is a metallic suit, and the way it explodes, it like lands in like little pebbles all over the place of metal, and in occasional cases, sometimes a big, like, piece. Well, this girl happens to be taking pictures of this event, and elements of the suit start raining down on her. And her car. She wakes up the next morning, and it's the elements of the suit that landed on her never came off of her. It's kind of like Fallout landing on you and stuff like that, and kind of fashioned themselves into like a breastplate. It all came together on her. When she goes out to her car, it was relatively small. When she goes out to her car, all of the ones that were on the car start getting attracted to it, and it starts to grow larger on her. Partway through the storyline, and I don't want to give away too much, but she starts to find out that it's not as simple as just the suit is part of her, and she also finds out that she's not the only one who it's landed on. And also, you figure because it's a government experiment, the government is seeking her out and the suit because there's a lot of money in this property. Yet, because it's a experimental suit, needless to say, as you can guess, there is a power that goes along with it as well. It's a very cool story. If you've ever read Strangers in Paradise, you'll be right at home with the quality of writing and artwork. The character's immediately accessible and engaging. She's going through, and as the story's beginning, she's going through a very rough divorce where she doesn't want the divorce. The husband does. And her vulnerability is something I think we all can relate to. We've all had relationships like that where, and you can kind of see both sides of the situation, which is really cool as well, where you can like side with her because you're attached to her, but yet you can also see, okay, I can see why her husband might be this way. I like stories like that where I'm still firmly in her corner, but yet I would be the friend who would say, well, you know, this is time for you to move on because look at the way the relationship's gone and all that. Now, the girl who blew up in the sky, her boyfriend, because he's trying to discover what happened to her, gets hooked up with this other girl, the main character. And it's just a neat book, and I kind of want to stop there because I could keep going on, and I'm really going to start giving away big elements of the story. But I think I've given you enough of a taste as to why the book is interesting. It is available in trade, so it's an easy one. Funny, he was talking about trades. You can get these trades. It's Terry Moore's Echo, and it's definitely, the name means something to the story. And we'll leave it at that. And if you haven't picked it up, it's very cool. The other one I want to shout is one I jumped on recently. I didn't actually jump on it last year, but it is a book that was released last year. Mark Waid's Irredeemable from Boom Studios. We talked on the show how it's not easy to be a superhero, how it wouldn't be easy to be Superman. Well, imagine being Superman. You're doing the job of Superman. But the truth of the matter is, we all know with everything that goes on in the world, is Superman going to be able to be really everywhere at once? No. How would society react to that? Sure, people would applaud him that he's saved and all that. How many people would berate him for not being where they needed him to be? How long would it take for that to eventually wear on him? I think we all know that that is something Clark Kent deals with, but he is the type of guy who can go beyond that. What happens if you're Superman and you can't? What happens when you snap? What happens when your greatest hero becomes your greatest enemy? What happens when a god becomes a cruel and terrible god? There are moments in this book where my jaw drops. I'm just going to share one, so this is a spoiler. There's a moment when one of his superhero teammates asks him, point blank, back when he was still a good guy, saying to him, what is it like to be you? What is it like to be, that person? Our little evil superhero friend now, our little evil Superman, causes a tsunami. It's when he's turned evil, to basically destroy, a whole country. The remaining heroes that he used to be his Justice League that he used to team up with come to try and reason with him and to stop this. He basically tells the guy, he looks at him and says, you have to choose 12. And he goes, what? He either said 10 or 12. I don't remember what the number is, but let's say it's 10 or 12. It doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. It's still very limited when you're talking about the whole country, right? So let's say it's 12. And the guy goes, why 12? And he goes, because that's what it's like to be me. So he remembered those questions from when he was that long ago saying that I always have to choose. I always had to choose. Now you understand who I am and what drives me and what happened to me. I mean, it's just moments like that are throughout this book where you're just like, oh my God, he's blowing my mind. This Irredeemable book, and they did make a sister series to it called Incorruptible, where it's in the wake of all this. And that just came out. There's only 2 issues of Incorruptible out, but it's still just as cool. And the character has very much like that gritty, like evil Punisher type character feel to it, or Batmanish character. What happens when a villain is in this world where this has all happened, sees the terrible god become the root of, destroying everything around him, changing the power structure of the whole thing, and sees the light. So, I mean, you've got somebody who was your mass killer, your, like, the Joker, let's say, for example, like that. That level of just evil, all of a sudden sees the light because of all this. So it's an interesting dynamic of the fact that they've both got these histories on the other level, and it's just crazy cool. It's another very similar to Terry Moore's Echo. I don't want to say too much beyond them because I don't want to spoil, but Irredeemable, and I'll just recommend Incorruptible as well, but Irredeemable is one. Boom Studios, oof. I could go on. There's tons of books this year. Touching on a couple things he said, he mentioned Wildstorm's video game lines. I read the Resistance series, and I really quite enjoyed it. I've read the first few issues of the Resident Evil one, and that kind of got delayed on the release schedule, but I enjoyed that one as well. I do like when Wildstorm does their miniseries, their tie-in minis, their media-related minis. We liked the horror line from them a great deal. I do like their video game line. It's interesting, I didn't pick up the Gears of War issues because I haven't played Gears of War. Now that he said it was so good, even though he hasn't played the game, it's got me intrigued. to pick it up and read it. I've also been interested in their World of Warcraft one. I'm not playing World of Warcraft, but it's Walt Simonson involved with, I know the initial, I don't know if he's still on it, but those have been collected in hardcovers, and it looks great. And it's that's all fantasy, which to me, that speaks to one of my interests. So I'm kind of interested in picking up their World of Warcraft stuff. But that's real interesting for me as well. So Wildstorm's really good at some of their media tie-ins. The God of War series I know is coming out. They're doing a series for God of War that is out this week, I believe, the first issue of it, of 6. And I do play God of War. They have preview artwork available for that. And it looks gorgeous if you go to the Wildstorm site. If you go dccomics.com and then click on Wildstorm and take a look at the God of War. For anybody who is playing that game, whether you are or not, it's written by Marv Wolfman. And the artwork looks stunning. That's another one that, you might want to consider from Wildstorm. On our forums, and I apologize, I was looking on the forums and it might have been Lantern Savage, but if it wasn't, I apologize because I saw it in passing and I didn't have a chance to respond to it yet. Was asking about any love for Ex Machina. I read Ex Machina in trade. We did the first trade on the show ages ago. I think we did kind of a... did we do a Speeding Bullets on that, Jim, or did we do something more in depth, like a couple issues?
We did more in depth.
Yeah.
We did in depth on it.
That was ages ago that we did it.
Yeah.
I've been reading that in trade ever since. I jumped on it late, and it's one of those that I read and collect and trade. But I echo the love for Ex Machina. I know it's wrapping up. I think it's this year that it is wrapping up, but it is something I'm going to follow that all the way through. It's Brian K. Vaughan, who did Y the Last Man. He's a writer on Lost and TV shows like that. But Brian K. Vaughan is one of those... I follow anything that Brian K. Vaughan does, and Ex Machina is something I can highly recommend as well. So I wanted to shout out some love for that from the forums. I didn't do a lot Wildstorm. I didn't do really anything Wildstorm in the Raging Ostrich just because this has been... I tried to stay up so much with the DC Universe and all the crossovers and everything that was going on in there for the show. I got stockpiled and behind a lot. So a lot more of my reading, I got my Vertigos caught up, and I just didn't... I let some of Wildstorm stuff slip. And I am going to this year, one of my resolutions is to try out a few more Wildstorm titles because I do like their output. Because I do think they're doing things that are different that you don't get from Vertigo, you don't get from DC. And it's not just the media tie-ins. It is series like Ex Machina. I'm incredibly interested in picking up the trades now. They've started collecting the Authority. I know that the trades have come out. I think the second trade just came out of the Authority post Wildstorm Armageddon.
Ooh.
Where it's now them dealing with what has happened post all of this. So, and I've heard nothing but good things. So, and, I like Top 10 Season 2 with Gene Ha. That stuff was incredible. Those covers from Gene Ha, just fantastic. I love those. But that story was Xander Cannon, I believe, was the writer on it. The artwork was really sharp on the interiors. It was just a really cool book. Wildstorm publishes some interesting output. So, that's something I wanted to read more of this year. But I'm glad that he gave some love to that. Trades. Do you? What are your thoughts on trades from DC? I wonder what the reasons are. I don't know if they look at budgets. Like Marvel, I know throws out a lot of trades. Like they seem to come out really fast compared, or at least the hardcovers do. What do you think the reasons are, Jim, that we're not getting more trades? I'd love to know why we're not getting them faster. Because like Secret Six is a great example of that. Why so far? Because it seems to me like a no-brainer. If you pick up like Secret Six at this crossover, like you mentioned, you would want to go back and pick up as much of it as you can and trade immediately. And you would think, I'm an impulse buyer that way, where if I like it enough that it makes me geek out. I did this for Irredeemable. It's a great example of this. I've heard so many good things about it that I picked up the first trade. I liked it so much that I immediately bought the second trade. I bought the issues to be current on it. I have read the whole thing now. I would do the same thing if I was in his position with Secret Six and go back through and grab all of those. So his point is very interesting there in that why aren't the trades coming out faster? And I'm sure there's a reason why. I mean, they're a business. They're in the business of making money. I just wonder why in that particular case, especially, when you've got like Blackest Night crossovers and stuff like that, why aren't the trades out to match your efforts of bringing it into the crossover series? That's an interesting question. And like you said, it's not that he said, it wasn't something where he's like, this isn't like an earth-shattering issue, but he said, I want to give you my money. And that's an interesting point. if somebody likes the crossover, and that's actually a compliment to the Secret Six Suicide Squad crossover, which I agree with him on. But I'm so glad to hear another convert to the Secret Six loyalists because it's such a great book. But again, I agree. I would love for somebody to say that. I love that I'm geeking out, and I feel sad for him that he can't get it yet. So I don't know. Do you think? Do you have any ideas on what the reason?
I got a theory.
Okay.
You think about it. If you know that a trade is going to come out, in a month or so, or 2 months after the issue comes out, are you going to? People may hold off and not buy the individual issues and just wait for the trade. If there is a lag between when the story arc is completed and the trade, they're more likely to get the individuals.
Okay.
So they don't want their trade sales interfering with their monthly single, the floppy sales, is my guess.
That would make sense. Except, see, this is an interesting question I have. Like, if you look at the Vertigo line, clearly Vertigo in a lot of cases, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but no, because we've been in panels where we've been basically told by writers and editors of Vertigo that your trade market is one of the target audiences. Your non-traditional comic fans is one of the target audiences of Vertigo. That's why I think they're doing things like this crime line and stuff like that, trying to put different kinds of Vertigo projects. We tend to see more of the card covers and stuff like that from Vertigo. So I wonder if a series like Vinyl Underground and stuff like that and Young Liars, when they canceled those series, I wonder if just the monthly sales were taken into account or if the trade sales were. And if the trades were released closer to the monthly books for some of these series, like would a Blue Beetle, for example, still be a series if the trades were released closer and maybe it reached a different audience that way? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm sure there's some complicated formula that I can't figure out, but I would love to know like what goes into some of the decision making as far as, how does the DC... I'm sure DC Universe handles it a lot differently than Vertigo does, for example. I'm sure Wildstorm handles it differently than both of the other two. I wonder what, though... I would think you would prioritize books that are part of a crossover. That would be me. Just say this is going to be our opportunity to get people... They're going to want to read the back issues. Because they're complete. I mean, this is a completist hobby. And we can argue...
I don't know. This is one of those things where... Why do they do what they do? This is something that only an insider will know.
And there is,
we can guess.
And it is a monetary, I'm sure there's a monetary reason, there's a financial reason where there comes a point where how much product can you put on the shelves? And if the more that sits on the shelves, the more money you're not making. You're putting more overhead, you're putting more cost in there. I agree with his sentiments, though. I would love to see... if there's going to be a crossover like that, that would make sense for that to be the case. I don't know. I liked his list. It was a really good list of titles. And it's funny, the Jonah Hex one. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. That Jonah Hex was... And did you read that? I know we talked about this at the time. Did you read that in a trade or in the monthly issues?
The Gun War?
Yeah.
I think that was a trade.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Right?
I don't remember how you read it because I was shocked that you read it.
Here's the thing with Jonah Hex, I've kind of broken my rule of all or the other, one or the other.
Oh, you got some.
There are a couple story arcs that I have that are floppies and a couple that are trades. If you talked about something, and I mean really passionately talked about something,
I did talk to you about that arc too.
Yeah, so I may have picked up the floppies on that one because I think you told me about it before it was done.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive that's a floppy.
Yeah. No, I did specifically when the first couple issues came out. I know I talked about either one or the first or second part on the show just because of how cool it was. I know the cliffhanger in issue 1 really was just like, and that was a bad story. So that would be one. I wouldn't be surprised if you picked that up in floppies just because I had said something. But again, boy, Ryan, fantastic phone call. Actually, I love hearing from people all over the place, and I love, the fact that we're lucky enough to have listeners internationally that are willing to call in and be a part of the show and participate in the forums and stuff like that. And please don't. And this is to anybody. please don't ever feel like you're going to sound weird or anything like that on the show. Different voices are fun sometimes. It's great to hear a different thought, and this is why we have a voicemail line, because of this. We've got actually a couple segments worth of voicemails that we've got backlogged right now that we're going to get on the show, and including ones that I've been saving up for episode 200 that people specifically called with those in, that we're going to be airing over this month. So call in, please. Give us your thoughts and things like that, because we love having you a part of the show. So it's very cool.
And for the record, just so everybody knows, there are no voicemails that sound worse than my singing. So there's always, the bar is set low enough that you can come in and clear it very easily.
That's funny.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Micah and Do What on the forum. Hopefully this is not too late. I was just calling in for the Raging Oscars so I could nominate something as the best book no one talks about at all this year. And that would be Batman in Barcelona. It was a single issue. I was put out, I don't remember, August, September, sometime around there, I guess. And all it was a story about Bruce Wayne, and he goes to Barcelona to fight Killer Croc. That was really it. There was nothing else to it. There wasn't some magical twist. We didn't learn anything new about Bruce. We didn't learn anything mystical about Batman. It was just an awesome done-in-one story. I think it was a little bit bigger than normal, like 48 pages maybe? Maybe 40 pages. But that was it. When they put it out, there was no real fanfare for it. I think it's collected now, but I'm not entirely certain. I just wanted to nominate it because I read that book and was like, I would love to see more of this. I would like if DC put out a little more of these done-in-one things on the book. And that's all. And it's awesome. And, yeah. Later.
That was a Prestige special.
Yeah.
That one that he's talking about. And it was by Mark Waid. And it was very good. And I totally agree with him. Actually, it's going to be collected on March 17th with another story by Alan Grant called The Scottish Connection, illustrated by Frank Quitely, plus Batman and Legends of the Dark Knight 52 to 53. So there's multiple series. The trade is called Batman International. When a string of bizarre murders hits Barcelona, the Dark Knight makes it his top priority. And it's, like I said, 168 pages. It's a $17.99 soft cover that's available on March 17th. And if it's one I'm sure InStockTrades.com is going to have, so you can get it at a discount if you want to go through our sponsor. But, it's the story's great. And I love Mark Waid. I was just ranting about Mark Waid, actually, on the previous one for his Irredeemable. And you know what? It's funny, for as comprehensive as I tried to hit on everything that I could remember. There's still things, when we were done, there's still things that I wished I had talked about. And what he just did here is exactly what I was hoping for out of these episodes. I was hoping that people would call in and just say, hey, you know what? Here's something, or post on the forums or something like that. Continue the discussion of the love for things that this year you're like, you know what, this is something nobody's talking about, and you should be. Because this is what's great about trades. Actually, we just had this rant about trades. Great example of what's great about trades. He's ranting and raving about this story enough that he called in and said, hey, this is something that I thought was really cool this year. It was just a great Batman story. It wasn't about, having to be all tied up in everything that's going on right now with Batman Reborn and all that. It was just a great, solid Batman story. And I loved it, and it was great, and I just wanted to shout it out. And it was one of those, it took me back to, because we don't see a lot of these now. Actually, we're starting to see a few more of these Prestige formats. We saw it with that Lobo series and this Milestone Forever. The ones that are on a little bit of the harder card stock and just a little bit of bigger story. I think this was one of those. It was definitely bigger and oversized. It was a good story, but I really dug that. So thank you, Micah, for shouting that out.
And it's funny that we talked in this episode about Batman being in other cities and stuff like that. And we got a great example right here of a really cool Batman story that had him outside of Gotham that, where it worked, and it was entertaining, and it was a good one-and-done, nice Batman story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Brian Casina over at Comic Timing. Just wanted to drop you a voicemail and say, I got new BK's bullets coming. They're out. I don't know which is which, but they're kind of long, so I kind of just put them on the Comic Timing feed if people want to check them out rather than take over you guys' show. They're about 30 minutes each. The first one is on Green Arrow, Judd Winnick, Kevin Smith run. Second one is on Final Crisis Revelations and Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, talking about those series as a whole. So kind of some overlooked stuff in the past couple of years. So about an hour of new stuff over on the Comic Timing feed. If you don't know where to get that, check out www.geekspeak.com/comic timing, or you can search for Comic Timing on the look for us on the comic forums, on iTunes, any local podcast catcher, and surely you'll find some link to us on the Raging Bullets website. So be sure you guys check that out, and thanks for you guys for participating in our episode 100 episode. Got a chance to listen to it. You guys did a great job. Really appreciate you guys' friendship and support of the show, of Comic Timing, and helping us reach that milestone of 100 episodes and shooting for 100 more. So thanks, guys. Good checking in with you. Hope to see you soon. Hear from you. Bye.
I actually do have a link directly on our website. The new website, actually. I set up a podcast section. I'm trying to make sure that I put all of the podcasts in there that I've had previously on our show's website. And if you're a fellow podcaster, actually, this is a good time for me to say it, and I don't have your link in there, or whether you're a podcaster or anybody, I'm trying to add back in all the links for podcasts and everything else that I previously had. If I don't have them back in yet, please shoot me an email at ragingbullets@gmail.com. It's completely an oversight. And every time I entered a new link, I kept trying to remember other ones to throw in and transfer them over. So if your link's not on the site, make sure it's there. But that's very cool that he's got some individual BK's bullets over there that speak.
Nice.
Yeah, geekspeak.com/comic timing. Right on ragingbullets.com, just click on podcasts and it's right there. And we also have a direct link over to the Comics Podcast Network where you can link to it right from there as well. So there's lots of different ways to go ahead and grab that. So good stuff. But, it's good to hear from Brent. I loved doing that 100th episode. We didn't get to chat with Brent.
Yeah, I know.
Which it'd be nice to do. At some point in time, we'll have to do something with Ian and Brent again where we can have a chance to all chat, because it's been a long time since we've had an opportunity to do that. And I do enjoy those, so we'll have to do that. But congratulations to those guys on the 100th episode, because I really had a good time talking about that. I'm still thinking about that topic to this day.
The iconic, yeah.
Well, because there's a lot of different ways. Under what context are you talking about iconic heroes? Because my answers on there could be very different depending on how I approached it. I approached it one way when we were chatting with them, but I could have looked at it a very different way. Who are characters that I consider iconic? I looked at it on that episode like, who are the characters that, like, most people, average people, would consider iconic. But when we get into characters that I consider iconic, boy, that list gets a lot larger.
And it's funny because that list is changing, because, when I look at who I think are iconic, Barry wasn't on the list back then. Now he is. Now I see an iconic Flash that is Barry Allen. So, and same thing with Ray Palmer. He's another character who he wasn't on iconic status, and he's there now. I see a lot of what some people, it's Barry, no, it's Wally. I'm like, okay, I get it now. I see, what is, about these characters.
Yeah, it's very cool. So anyway, I want to give a shout out once again to our good friends over at Comic Timing, and specifically to Brent's BK's Bullets episodes. If you've been a long-time listener, you've heard Brent do them on the show before, and that's basically what they are. And Brent released them, he said, about half-hour segments over there, so go check on them. I listened to his Green Arrow one. It's very good. So thanks, Brent.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Jim, our next episode, JLA Avengers and JLA Crisis on Two Earths. We're going to be talking about that more casually, the DVD, but we'll also talk about the Spectre short, and we're going to talk about the preview of that Batman Under the Red Hood, because that begs talking about. But we'll kind of talk about that and JLA Avengers, and that's going to be obviously a multi-part discussion. But we're going to be joined by listener and friend of the show, Kent Hare, because he was the one that won the contest to be joining us for that. So this is going to be a big event. It's a big story. I want to actually recommend a podcast episode to prepare you for that. Comic Geek Speak released a Footnotes episode a while back. And I deliberately am not going to redo what they did, because they did what they did so well. We're just going to kind of do it our way and our thing, which is great, because for anybody that's listened to that, you're going to find, something different than what they did. But for people that haven't, there's a reason to go listen to the Comic Geek Speak show. I try to, whenever we do these kind of episodes, to just kind of do it with our own flavor and that type of thing, and respect the quality of what they did. And their exploration was really in depth and very cool, and it's stuff that I geek out over. But they clearly did it their way. It's Adam Murdo and Peter Rios, and it was just a very cool episode. It's been ages since I've heard it. I deliberately didn't listen to it again in preparing for this because it's been so long since they released that episode that I didn't want to have that fresh in my mind and redo what they did. Have you heard that episode yet?
Listen now so I can steal it.
Yeah. No. Have you listened? So you haven't listened to it?
I haven't heard that one. So.
Yeah, that's one. I actually would recommend waiting until after we're done with the discussion, but then listening to it because it's a very cool exploration of this book. So I just want to give them a shout out, and I love the Comic Geek Speak guys, and wanted to give them a lot of love for that particular episode. But we're gonna have some fun with our own flavor and our own spin on this great series. Chance to talk about Marvel on our podcast, which is going to be a lot of fun to talk about those characters and. So it's going to be, that's a meaty book, 208 pages, and we're going to dissect the whole thing. So that will be our next episode. Jim, our sponsors for this episode, as I mentioned, DCBService.com. They are going to be releasing the new books this week, so definitely check them out. Look for those discounts up to 75% off. That's DCBService.com. And want to remind everyone about InStockTrades.com. JLA Avengers trade paperback, 208 pages, $19.99 regularly, 47% off, only $10.59. That's InStockTrades.com. Very, very cool. I actually want to give a quick apology to listeners of the show. I write up little blurbs and things to remember to shout out things on the show. And David Barron's contest was over on the last episode when I announced it. And he's done a couple of contests in cooperation with us, and I shouted out the contest again. But David Barron has a wonderful Twitter and blog, and he's going to continue doing contests down the road. I know that as he's going on. And all you have to do to be entered into his contests is to be following his blog and Twitter, and every so often, he'll ask you to retweet something or, to kind of and we'll announce it on the show when he has his next contest. But definitely follow them now. Not just for the contest purposes, they're very interesting blogs and Twitter pages. He's constantly throwing up original art, his thoughts on comic. He's shouting out creators that he's worked with. He's shouting out comics. He shouted out IDW's Choker by Ben Templesmith, which is something I didn't even pick up, and I ended up grabbing it. And it's a great book. It's a great recommendation. So it's real interesting to hear a comic creator talk about comics that he loves and things like that. But he's done those contests in partnership with our show, which I really appreciate the fact that he gave us some love. He's been shouting out our podcast on his blog, so I want to give him the same respect and be shouting out his blog and Twitter page on our show. That's myzombies.blogspot.com, twitter.com/myzombies to follow his Twitter. And there's actually links directly on ragingbullets.com and in the show notes. So that's David Barron, colorist and friend of the show. And thank you very much, David, for your partnership in those contests with us. It's very, very cool. Jim, we will see everyone next week. JLA Avengers.
Bye.